Chapter 763. The end of May was not Leo, but the broadcast date of the episode of Jixin interview that Yang Yi and Murphy recorded in Shanghai. At the same time, it was also the time when their 2 English songs were officially released at night. Songji, the young girl who was previously mentioned. As a qualified fan, Songji naturally received the news early and sat in front of the computer early. She opened the Shanghai TV station's website and watched the show directly through the internet. They are indeed a perfect match. When Songji saw Yang Yi and Murphy walk out from the backstage, her eyes lit up and she couldn't help but sigh. Murphy's outfit had been carefully selected. The color, patterns, and materials looked simple, but it was definitely not simple. It gave people a gentle, quiet, and comfortable feeling. Yang Yi was wearing a suit, which was very rare. After all, Yang Yi rarely appeared in front of the camera. Even if he attended some events, he would wear casual clothes and wear whatever was comfortable. Songji didn't know if she remembered wrongly or what, but she felt that it was the first time she saw Yang Yi in a suit, and the effect of the suit was surprisingly good. Yang Yi's figure was too good. Usually it was covered by loose clothes, but now that he wore a suit, the clothes frame was propped up. He was like a model, slender, handsome, and solid. Interestingly, Yang Yi and Murphy might not be willing to show their affection in front of the camera, so they didn't walk out holding hands. However, in the details captured by the camera, Songji could still see some loving interactions between them. For example, Murphy was thirsty, or it was a requirement of the show. She took the sponsor's drink on the table, twisted it twice, and then handed it to Yang Yi. Yang Yi gently twisted it open and handed it back to Murphy. These actions were smooth and not pretentious at all. The show talked about a lot of interesting things about Yang Yi and Murphy's tour in Australia. At that time, did Yang Yi tell you in advance that he was going to give you a surprise? Or did he suddenly take out a guitar and sing for you? Luo Xian asked Murphy on TV with a gossipy face. It's not a surprise if you tell me in advance. Murphy smiled and said, actually, the situation at that time was like this. Before us, there was a boy who was confessing to his girlfriend. When he saw it, he suddenly didn't say anything and ran to borrow a guitar from someone else. So it was a last-minute decision? Luo Xian looked at Yang Yi. It was indeed an impromptu idea. At that time, I suddenly felt that it would be very interesting to sing a song for Murphy on such a beautiful beach. Yang Yi smiled and said, I've written the song a long time ago, but I've been hiding it. I wanted to find an opportunity to sing it for Murphy, but we're an old married couple. It's difficult to make it romantic and special. From a woman's point of view, I actually don't think it's a big deal to repeat the romance, as long as the man has such a romantic heart. Luo Xian smiled and said, Murphy, I think you must have a lot of thoughts when you saw the special surprise that Yang Yi gave you. Can you share them with the audience? Songji stared at the screen and pursed her lips as she muttered to herself. Of course it's happiness. Do you still have to ask? Murphy's answer was similar and concise. Have you ever thought that your public display of affection would be filmed by someone and uploaded to the internet, and even become popular in the West? Luo Xian continued to ask. We can't call that a public display of affection, right? Murphy looked a little embarrassed in the camera. Yang Yi chimed in and said, I also think that it can't be called a public display of affection, because everyone was playing on the beach. With some music to adjust the atmosphere, they also shared our happiness. But I really didn't expect that it would be uploaded to the internet. After a while, Luo Xian asked Yang Yi to sing I'm Yours. After last month, Songji had not heard this song for a while. After all, it was an English song and Songji preferred Chinese songs. This was considered a live version, and the sound quality of the broadcast was not bad. It was much better than the video taken by a passerby a month ago. Songji was soon intoxicated by Yang Yi's rhythmic and affectionate singing. In fact, it was not only Songji. Many viewers who were not Yang Yi's fans could not help but listen to Yang Yi's song when they changed the channel. After Yang Yi finished singing, they returned to the interview segment, where Luo Xian talked about Xixi. In the video, many attentive viewers noticed that Murphy had 2 children with her at that time, including your youngest son who was born at the end of last year? Luo Xian smiled and said, Yes, we always bring Shishi and Chunchin with us when we travel. Murphy nodded. We can't just leave them at home. Besides, I think it's more meaningful to travel with family, Yang Yi said with some emotion. In fact, Shishi and Tong Tong were also brought to Shanghai TV station at that time. During the recording, they stayed in the lounge with Mo Xiaowan. Shishi was also watching Yang Yi sing at that time. How did she react? Luo Xian asked. She was even happier than I was. Murphy smiled and said, happier than you? Luo Xian was surprised. Maybe she was proud of me. Yang Yi touched his chin. After all, many foreign tourists were cheering at that time. Shishi understands English, so she could understand that people were praising me. Cici can understand English? Luo Xian was a little surprised. Shishi grew up in the United States, so she has a foundation in English. She also learned a lot of English from the teacher in kindergarten, so she can understand and speak now. Her standard is not bad. Yang Yi explained. I'm curious. How do you educate your children at home? Now many viewers are especially fond of Shishi. If it weren't for you, I would have invited her to be my guest. Luo Xian said with a smile. Under Luo Xian's guidance, Yang Yi talked about how to raise a child, and Murphy occasionally chimed in. Although many of the single viewers like Songji were listening to the cute Shishi stories, there were still many parents who were interested in learning how Yang Yi and his family educated their children. I heard that Yang Yi also wrote another English song for you to sing. You're going to release it together with I'm Yours, right? Luo Xian brought up the finale. There's another song? Songji, who was a little bored at first, was suddenly energized. Yes, but I can't say that it was specially written for me. This song was sung for Shishi when he was telling her a story. Shishi likes this song very much. Murphy couldn't help but laugh. Those who have watched Shishi's bedtime stories should know the story of Frozen. Yang Yi said. I know this. It's one of my favorite fairy tales, Luo Xian said with a smile. The English song that Murphy sang was written with this story as the background. Yang Yi said shamelessly, I'll advertise here. Now the story of Frozen has been adapted and made into an animated movie. It's still in the process of production. It's expected to be released to the audience next year. I hope you like it. Yang Yi, if you advertise here, I'll charge advertising fees. Luo Xian smiled. This advertising fee was naturally for Murphy to sing, Let's Go on Stage. Originally, Songji didn't have much hope. She didn't think that Yang Yi could write a second wonderful English song. However, she was very interested in Murphy singing on stage again, after more than a year. But who knew that Murphy would use her increasingly beautiful voice to give a perfect interpretation of this song, which was not inferior to I'm Yours at all. It also completely conquered the hearts of Songji and the audience. It's so good? But what's this song about? What's with that fairy tale? Songji knelt down in front of Yang Yi and Murphy. It seems that I'm going to lose my living expenses for the next 2 days. Those who don't listen to English songs are going crazy over these 2 songs. Chapter 764. June 1st, Children's Day, which didn't exist in Yang Yi's world, was a rare weekend. Just like last year, Yang Yi threw a small party for Shishi and her friends. In the courtyard of the Yang family's villa, Yang Yi brought the father's group to barbecue. As they barbecued food for their wife and children, they chatted about all sorts of topics. Of course, they were talking about men. On the other hand, Murphy led the mother's group to play with the 6-month-old Tong Tong and Chen Shiyun's 1-year-old brother by the flower bed. Hee. Nan Zhaoyu, you can't go back on your word. You have to do it dozens of times before you can come and find us. In the clean and bright villa with the open door, the laughter of a few young girls echoed in the room. Shishi and her friends weren't in a hurry to eat barbecue. They were playing hide and seek. Shishi's villa wasn't big. It wasn't big enough for Shishi and her friends to search endlessly. However, it wasn't small either. It had 3 floors and more than 10 rooms. It was just right for children to explore. At this moment, Nan Zhaoyu appeared as the pursuer. Shishi and her friends laughed and told Nan Zhaoyu not to go back on his word. That was because Chen Shiyun didn't count to 100 before she went to look for him. However, Nan Zhaoyu was very honest. The little boy stood alone at the entrance of the villa. He leaned against the door and counted very honestly. 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2. She could count from 1 to 100. However, Nan Jiayu wasn't that good. His talent in mathematics didn't seem to be as high as his recitation of poems. Therefore, he counted the numbers over and over again, dozens of times. When he finally finished counting, Nan Jiayu closed his eyes and shouted, "I'm done counting. I'm coming to catch you guys." The villa was quiet, and none of her friends responded. Nan Jiayu began to search, but he couldn't find anyone on the first floor, so he excitedly ran up the stairs. Hearing Nan Jiayu's footsteps, young Luoqi, who was hiding in the corner of the stairs, was extremely nervous. The little girl was a little afraid of enclosed spaces, so she didn't hide in the room. However, it was very dangerous outside. Nan Jiayu could discover her at any time. However, Nan Jiayu had no intention of looking back. His small figure flashed in front of young Luoqi and went into the bedroom next door. Ah! Before young Luoqi could breathe a sigh of relief, Shishi screamed. "Hee, I caught you, Shishi." Nan Jiayu's proud laughter was heard. It turned out that Nan Jiayu spent a lot of time searching on the first floor. Shishi, who was hiding behind the bed, couldn't help but come out to see what was going on. But unexpectedly, Sisi walked right into the trap. She had just tiptoed to the door when she heard Nan Jiayu's footsteps. When she was about to hide in a panic, Nan Jiayu also opened the door and caught a glimpse of Sisi's back, who had not yet had the time to hide. "I'm the first one." "No, Shishi, you're the first one I caught." Nan Jiayu was overjoyed as he grabbed onto Shishi's clothes to prevent her from escaping. Sisi pouted her little mouth in dissatisfaction. She felt that she had lost too unjustly. However, Shishi still kindly said to Nan Jiayu, "All right, you don't have to look here. There's no one else here." However, how could Nan Jiayu believe her? He didn't believe her even more. He searched even harder, as if there was really someone else in the room. He even climbed onto the bed to fiddle with the neatly folded quilt. His good intentions were being treated as ill intent. Shishi, who was already unconvinced, pursed her lips and walked out gloomily. As she walked towards the stairs, she saw young Luoqi hiding in the corner. The two beautiful ladies looked at each other. Young Luoqi hurriedly raised her little finger and put it in front of her mouth to shush her. Sisi blinked her big eyes. Thinking about Nan Jiayu's bad guy behavior of not believing her words just now, she smiled and nodded at young Luoqi. After a while, Nan Jiayu finished searching the second floor and was ready to head to the third floor. Just as he was about to see young Luoqi, Shishi stood in the middle. The tall lady blocked Nan Jiayu's vision. "I'm going to look for Chi-Chi and the rest." Nan Jiayu didn't suspect anything. He excitedly ran past Shishi and went upstairs to look for them. When Nan Jiayu ran upstairs, Shishi made faces at her little friend. The two of them laughed quietly. Of course, this was just a delay. Nan Jiayu found Lan Xian and Chen Shiyan hiding on the third floor. Not long after, he found young Luoqi. After playing for a while during the break, Wu Yu from the mother group diligently made a glass of milk for each of the children. Hurry, it's Shishi's turn to look for them." Chen Shiyan was having fun. She gulped down the milk in a few mouthfuls. She didn't even bother to wipe off the white beard on her mouth and couldn't wait to shout, "Don't worry, drink slowly. Don't choke." Several mothers were taking care of the little ones. Wu Jingjing smiled and said, "When you're tired later, come and eat barbecue. Your father made a lot of delicious barbecue for you." "I want to eat." Lan Xian licked her little mouth, smelling the fragrance from the barbecue stall next to her. She was already hungry. However, Lan Xian was still dragged away by her little friends to play. Including Shishi, the other little friends still wanted more. "Shishi, you have to count to 100 too," Chen Shiyan said. She was breaking the rules, but she was still worried about others. "Okay, I won't do the same as you," Shishi giggled. "I'm going to start counting. You guys hide." Shishi didn't press against the door to count. After the door of the villa was opened, she leaned against it and it made squeaking sounds. It sounded uncomfortable, so the little girl covered her eyes with her hands and leaned against the wall to count. While young Luoqi and the others were frantically running to find a place to hide, Steamed Bun followed them around, looking like he was worried sick. Finally, he saw the figures running upstairs. Steamed Bun wagged his tail and hesitated for a moment before running back to Cece, who was still counting the numbers. When she finished counting to 100, she raised her head in a daze and saw Steamed Bun beside her. Steamed Bun was copying her. He put his 2 front feet on the wall and stretched his body. When he saw the little master looking over, he stuck out his tongue and wagged his tail happily. Hee. Why are you counting too? It's not like you're playing hide and seek. She smiled and whispered to Steamed Bun. Steamed Bun thought the little master wanted to play with him, so he happily followed behind the little master and watched her search on the first floor. Steamed Bun was very smart. After following the little master for a while, he seemed to understand what the little master was playing. Steamed Bun wagged his tail and ran in front of the little master. Woof woof. She didn't care at first, but Steamed Bun bit Shishi's trousers and kept gesturing. Shishi followed Steamed Bun with a puzzled look. After a while, Nan Zhaoyu's pitiful cry came from the second floor. Shishi, you cheated. You can't bring a dog to hide and seek. After a while, Lan Xian and Nan Zhaoyu, who were caught first, strongly protested. Steamed Bun, who had contributed greatly, was kicked out of the villa. Of course, Steamed Bun didn't feel wronged. He whimpered as he ran to his master and asked for a few pieces of chicken leg bones. He gnawed on them with relish. This Steamed Bun's treatment is something that Demon King Xianer can't even envy. Chapter 765. Steamed Bun was lying on the lush green grass, gnawing on 2 pieces of chicken leg bones that still had meat on them. However, the excellent Chinese rural dog blood made it so that it would never let down its guard. Although its head was buried between its legs, its mouth trembling as it gnawed on the bone, its ears were still alert. It wasn't clear if it was listening to the movements inside or outside the house, or if it was listening to the conversation between the big master and the others. Boss Lan, a few days ago, I heard from a client of the boxing gym that Jiangqing is preparing to make a big move in the old city area. If you have money, you should buy a house in Wu Lake as soon as possible. You're in the real estate business, have you heard of this? Chen Guoqiang asked with a smile. Aren't the children going to the Huijia Primary School in Wu Lake to study? I was thinking that if there really is such a thing, we also plan to buy a house there. Whether it's investment or living there, it'll be more convenient. Yang Yi and Lans Haokai's families were filthy rich, so they didn't need to worry too much about small profits. However, the other 3 families were different. Their families might have millions of yuan in savings, and their combined income was slightly better than a normal family's, but that was still only in the middle class. Therefore, when Chen Guoqiang mentioned this, Yang Gua and Nan Yiyun couldn't help but look over. Especially Nan Yiyun. He used to be more virtuous and had the arrogance of a scholar, treating money like dirt. However, after that stroke, Nan Yiyun realized the importance of money. Without money, if something happened to him, what would happen to his wife and son? I think the possibility of Jiangqing developing the Wu Lake area is very high. Think about it, the potential of the coastal area is almost fully developed. Because of the Tingshan mountain range, there isn't much land that can be used. On the other hand, the old city area has a lot of potential. The original framework is still there. Once those old houses are demolished and the roads are repaired, it will look brand new. If I were the mayor, I would also want to think about this, Nan Yiyun said confidently. Of course, they still wanted to hear Lans Haokai's opinion. Before the government's matters are announced, no one can say for sure. Lans Haokai said with a smile. He was still more cautious when commenting on the direction of the government's policies, so he didn't say too much. However, Lans Haokai didn't disappoint his close friends. He said meaningfully, but if you have extra money, you can buy a house on the east side of Wu Lake, near Tingshan District. It's definitely more cost-effective than putting your money in the bank and earning interest. Of course, this is also a long-term investment. Who knows when they will start to develop, and when they will develop. Lans Haokai wouldn't tell them that other than renovating the old houses in Wuhu District, Jiangqing City also had plans to build a subway line. However, Chen Guoqiang and the others had already understood the meaning behind Lans Haokai's words. They quickly nodded and remembered it in their hearts. No matter which world it was, in the eyes of the general public, investing in real estate was indeed a very good choice. After that, they brought the topic back to their master, Yang Yi. A few days ago, Yang Yi, didn't you release a new song with Murphy? It's an English song. I even recommend students to listen to it in class. Yang Gua, the associate professor of English, smiled and said, but to be honest, your two songs are really well written. I'm talking about the lyrics. I think it's almost on par with the level of other native speakers. Is it the song Let It Go? I heard from my colleagues that there are many female customers in the gym on the second floor who listen to your song running on loop, Chen Guoqiang said. This song was sung by Murphy. Yang Yi smiled casually. Both of them are very good at English. Lance Hao Kai said casually as he chewed on a grilled chicken wing. So Shishi's English is also very good. By the way, Yang Gua, you are an English teacher. You said that our Xian Air's English is a bit bad. Do you want her to take a class during the holidays? In the previous discussion, they also talked about the summer vacation arrangements. Young Luoqi was pitifully arranged by her parents to take a lot of interest classes, such as dance, piano, and even math classes. Every family has a different education philosophy for their children. Yang Yi only needs to take care of his own daughter. He doesn't want to interfere with other parents' choices too much. But he has to persuade Lance Hao Kai. He doesn't want Lan Xian to be haggard from attending classes at such a young age. Although haggard can help with weight loss. Brother Lan, if you want Xian Air to learn English well, you should take her abroad during the summer vacation. Murphy and I are going to take Shishi to her grandfather's house in the US for a month or two. She will definitely be fluent in English when she comes back. You can let her learn while playing and spend more time with her. This is killing two birds with one stone. Isn't it better than attending classes? Yang Yi said with a smile. Yang Yi is right. The more you listen and practice, the faster you can learn English. Yang Gua supported. At this time, the hide-and-seek game in the villa started a new round. This time, it was Chen Shiyin who was looking for someone. However, when Chen Shiyin was counting the numbers, Lan Xian quietly came out of the door and ran over to her father's group. Xian Air, why did you come out? Aren't you guys playing? Yang Yi noticed Lan Xian coming over before Lance Hao Kai and asked with a smile. I'm hungry. Lan Xian looked at the skewer of barbecued meatballs in Yang Yi's hand and said while swallowing her saliva. It seems that Yang Yi's question passed through her head like a gust of wind, leaving no impression at all. Come, here's some barbecued meatballs. Take whatever you want. Yang Yi brought over a large plate of barbecued meatballs and smiled as he gave Lan Xian her choice. Looking at the plate full of barbecued meatballs, Lan Xian's saliva flowed out. She finally moved her gaze away from the top and looked longingly at Yang Yi and said, Uncle Yang, can I take two? She was also a little greedy. Yang Yi said with a smile. Of course, if you can finish eating, this is all yours. Hehe. Lan Xian was so happy that she forgot to say thank you. She held a skewer of barbecued lamb in her left hand, and a long skewer of barbecued chicken wings in her right hand. She stood in place and couldn't wait to eat. As the little foodie ate, she stared at the food on her plate with eager eyes. Come sit down and eat. Lance Hao Kai finally came to serve the little ancestor. He moved a small stool for Lan Xian to sit on. Lance Hao Kai saw that his daughter was eating happily, so he also took a skewer of the meatballs that Yang Yi had just roasted. As a result, when he turned around, he saw his daughter staring straight at him. He couldn't help laughing. Hey, can't your father eat a skewer? The hide-and-seek in the villa was still going on. Chen Shiyin found the other friends, but she couldn't find Lan Xian. Where's Xian Air? Shishi and the others waited for a long time, and couldn't help but help to look for her. However, the four little guys turned the villa upside down and couldn't find her. Shishi went to the big balcony on the second floor. She tiptoed over the railing, poked half of her small head out, and called out in a crisp voice. Papa, have you seen Xian Air? Yang Yi was just about to answer. However, Shishi had already seen Lan Xian eating and drinking among the adults through the glass. The little girl turned her head excitedly and shouted into the house. I see her. Xian Air is downstairs. She's with her papa. I found her. How can you hide outside? Chun Shiyun's angry voice also sounded in the building. The army of thousands of people who were eager to denounce Lan Xian were rushing outside the house. Although there was a lot of noise there, Lan Xian was still eating her food wholeheartedly. She didn't even notice that her face was smeared with sauce. Chapter 766. On the 3rd of June, Xingyao held a press conference. In the flashes of the reporters, Luo Jinting, with a glowing face, introduced their newly produced reality show called Travel Challenge. Our show's theme is travel, but what's more interesting than travel is the difficulties that the show will set for the guests. They need to challenge themselves and break through one obstacle after another. Xingyao teamed up with Xiangnan TV to produce this show. The fixed lineup of invited members was very luxurious, 3 men and 3 women. There were A-list singers like Yi Qing and Li Manman, as well as idol singers like Chao Tsong. In addition, there were also 2 little fresh meats and a beauty from a popular girl group. Don't underestimate the influence of idols. The 6 of them, not to mention the number of fans added together, wasn't inferior to the 6 people in the Limit Challenge. Just in terms of looks, they completely beat the Limit Challenge. It could be said that although the 6 of them didn't come to the press conference, but seeing the appearance of the 6 on the show's poster was enough to make the audience look forward to it. Of course, since the name Challenge was used, it was inevitable that the reporters would pull it out and compare it to the Limit Challenge. What's the difference between us and a certain show? Luo Jinting said with a smile. Of course there's a lot of differences. We're completely different from them. If we're the same, then wouldn't we be plagiarizing? It's like this, the travel that our show talks about isn't a normal trip, but a more beautiful and challenging foreign trip. Just like right now, our members are recording the first episode of the show in France. They're in a country where they don't speak the language, and they also need to face all kinds of difficulties from the show's crew. For example, we'll limit their travel expenses, give them missions to earn travel expenses, etc. If they want to make this trip more exciting, then they need to face these challenges. This process will be very exciting and very interesting. Luo Jinting said with confidence. It sounded pretty good, so Luo Jinting naturally had to describe his show to the heavens. However, the real effects still needed to wait until the show was broadcast to be clear. But without a doubt, the Limit Challenge was about to meet a strong enemy. Moreover, this strong enemy wasn't like other imitation shows that were unsightly. Xingyao put a lot of effort into this show, and also received the support of Xiangnan TV, the variety show's overlord. Its strength couldn't be underestimated. Of course, it was still too early to say. It was unknown if Xingyao had done it on purpose, but they had set the premiere of the Travel Challenge in September. It was enough to separate it from the first season of the Limit Challenge. According to the plan, the first season of the Limit Challenge would end in mid-August. It seemed that they were not competitors. However, the 2 variety shows were still somewhat similar, and it was bound to cause a battle of public opinion and the audience's reputation. Speaking of which, even though the last episode of the first season of the Ultimate Challenge ended in mid-August, the recording for this episode had already started early. Due to the busy schedules of several big names like Jie Yuchen, who had successfully passed Wu Yan's audition, he would be playing the role of Andy in the blockbuster movie, The Shawshank Redemption. Wu Yan's movie was not widely publicized, nor was there any press conference. Of course, he was only at the stage of confirming the actors. He was still waiting for the prison's renovation to be completed before he could officially start filming. The prison for the movie was in the suburbs of a city in Anqing province. Wu Yan's crew rented an old prison that had been eliminated before the arrival of the new era. Of course, in order to conform to the original prison's appearance, the crew had also invested a lot of money to renovate it. This movie with a big director and big-name stars naturally attracted the attention of many film companies. During the negotiation process between Wu Yan and Yang Yi, the investment and profit-sharing model was the focus of the 2 sides for several days. Of course, Yang Yi gave in. He later agreed to Wu Yan's investment, and Yang Yi's Hua Yi brothers only invested 1 million yuan symbolically. Together with the copyright, he took 10% of the profit share. During the final negotiation, Wu Yian told Yang Yi that the estimated total investment for this movie was more than 80 million yuan. Yang Yi looked at the other party with a strange expression. Yang Yi was not like Wu Yian thought. He could not afford the money, but he was not willing to invest so much money in this movie. Although Yang Yi liked this movie very much and was crazy about the spiritual theme of the story, he also knew that when this movie was released in his previous life, the box office was indeed a flop. The investment of 25 million yuan, but the total box office was only 28 million yuan. If it were not for the fact that it made a lot of money for Warner Brothers by selling videotapes over the next 20 years, this most acclaimed movie in history might have been a losing movie. Of course, with a different box office environment, a different country, and even a different cast, Yang Yi could not be sure whether this movie would still be a flop. Maybe it would make a comeback, too? However, Yang Yi had other uses for his money. He did not want to gamble, nor did he want to wait for 20 years to recoup his investment. Therefore, he agreed to Wu Yian's idea of attracting other investors to film this movie. The reason why Wu Yian chose Jie Yuchen as the lead actor of this movie, he did not cross over, because although Jie Yuchen was a film emperor, he had also acted in 1 or 2 movies. Had little to do with him being a regular member of Yang Yi's variety show. The person who recommended him for the audition was Chen Fengchen, who had worked with Jie Yuchen many times. Jie Yuchen might be funny during the recording, but his acting skills were not bad at all. During the audition, he won over Wu Yian and Yang Yi. Other than Jie Yuchen's tight schedule, Dan Hongkui also had to free up his schedule for the second half of the year to film a big production movie. Therefore, the production team of The Ultimate Challenge sped up the recording frequency and had to finish the 6 episodes in July and August in advance. Dan Hongkui suddenly came out of Phoebe Studio with a few cameramen and executive directors. Yang Yi was kept in the dark. He, Murphy, Jining Ming, and Qianli Chuanshu, who was about to graduate and had signed with the Hua Yi brothers, were producing music in the recording studio. Dan Hongkui smiled slyly and knocked on the door. "What's going on? What's going on?" Yang Yi saw the cameraman behind Dan Hongkui and could not help but laugh. "Are you filming The Ultimate Challenge? Why are you here?" Dan Hongkui pulled Yang Yi's hand and called him brother. "Hey, no, you're my brother. Brother Dan, don't be so mushy. If there's anything, just say it." Yang Yi smiled. "If I can help you, I'll definitely help you." Dan Hongkui then told him the reason for his visit. It turned out that the final special episode of the first season was to organize a charity gala. However, it was different from the one in Yang Yi's previous life. The 6 members had to find a songwriter to write a new song for them. Then, they would participate in the charity gala to raise money for the children in the mountainous areas. Of course, before that, they had to go through all kinds of scheming. They had to choose the songwriter they wanted one by one. Dan Hongkui chose Yang Yi before Yang Huan did. The production team was really bad. They had already contacted the other 5 groups of songwriters, but they did not tell Yang Yi. That was to increase the difficulty of Yang Yi and Dan Hongkui's task. "So, I'm going to write a song for you to sing in the concert, right?" Yang Yi asked. "We'll sing it in the concert. We'll sing it together," Dan Hongkui said. "Concert? The concert of The Ultimate Challenge. What song should I sing?" Suddenly, Yang Yi had an idea. "Where are you from, brother Dan?" Yang Yi suddenly started chatting. Dan Hongkui was a little confused, but he still told Yang Yi, "I'm from Dongshan." Yang Yi smiled strangely and said, "Brother Dan, our show is called The Ultimate Challenge, right? Since that's the case, I have an idea for my song. However, I might need you to do some challenges. For example, you'll have to practice singing in a dialect you don't know." "Dialect?" Dan Hongkui rolled his eyes and remembered the Cantonese song, "Love of a Lifetime," that Yang Yi released a while ago. He asked proudly, "You're talking about Cantonese? That's easy to learn and I know some too. For example, Thunder Monkey." Yang Yi held back his laughter. "Brother Dan, who told you I was talking about Cantonese?" Chapter 767. Singing a dialect song. If it wasn't Cantonese, what else could it be? Dan Hongkui was confused, but he was one of the extreme 3 essences. The other 2 were Yuan Yen and Guizi, and had a high EQ. Once he heard what Yang Yi said, he began to beg for mercy. Of course, Dan Hongkuei's torture process would last for a few days. There was no need to elaborate on these details. The mystery would be solved when the show was broadcasted. Although the first season of the Limit Challenge was coming to an end and China Star Productions had announced that the second season had been renewed by Magic City TV station, Yun Yongfeng still appeared in the capital to meet his old friend, director Meng Fanxing, for a meal. In the adult world, there weren't so many unsolvable love and hatred. There were only ever-changing relationships of interest. The relationship between Meng Fanxing and Yun Yongfeng was the same. Back then, Meng Fanxing had rejected the Limit Challenge because it was too early. Magic City TV station had taken advantage of it, and Meng Fanxing regretted it immensely. Meng Fanxing and Magic City TV station had even been dragged out by some media outlets to label them as the typical example of blind people. The Limit Challenge had been broadcasted for a few months and Meng Fanxing had been mocked by the industry for a few months. However, Meng Fanxing did not hate Yun Yongfeng because of this. This time, when Yun Yongfeng came to the capital and invited him for a meal, Meng Fanxing gladly accepted. At the dinner table, Meng Fanxing complained about Yun Yongfeng, using a teasing tone to vent the depression in his heart. Speaking of which, it's still your fault. You had to pick such an early time. If it was so urgent, where could I find the time for you? I was very optimistic about your show at that time, but the conditions were limited. Meng Fanxing rambled on. Yes, it's my fault. Yun Yongfeng maintained a humble posture as he poured wine for Meng Fanxing. Both of them toasted each other and chatted a lot, as if they were very close friends. I don't have any hopes for the Limit Challenge. Magic City TV station will definitely not let go of such a fat piece of meat so easily. Meng Fanxing rambled on. But China Star Productions, Yang Yi, if you have any new shows, Old Yun, you have to consider Magic City TV station first. Yes, that's a must. Our production company, China Star, has worked with Beijing television station and Old Brother Meng for many years, so we have a tacit understanding. If there's a chance, we'll definitely continue to work together, Yun Yongfeng said with a smile. Meng Fanxing was a little tipsy, but his words were still very clear. As long as your show is creative and is as exciting as the Limit Challenge, Old Yun, I Meng Fanxing promise you that the time slot is not a problem. I can give you a primetime slot on Friday nights. Yun Yongfeng's eyes shone as he said, Old Brother Meng, you're the one who said it. A gentleman's words cannot be taken back. Meng Fanxing patted his chest and said heroically. Yun Yongfeng chuckled and said, Actually, Director Yang has been preparing for a new variety show. He provided a great idea. This time, I came to Beijing to discuss with you and see if there's any possibility of cooperation. Meng Fanxing could not be bothered to complain about the trap Yun Yongfeng had set for him. He was energized and asked like a machine gun. What kind of program? Was it like the Limit Challenge? Or are you going to compete with Glorious Stars, the Great Travel Challenge? It was not surprising that Meng Fanxing was involved in the variety show industry's news. The Great Travel Challenge? If we don't care about it, there will be plenty of programs that copy the Limit Challenge, Yun Yongfeng said with a smile. Besides, with the quality of the Limit Challenge, we're confident that we can beat the other copycats. In fact, when Glorious Star Productions released the Great Travel Challenge, there was actually a heated discussion within Zhongxing Productions. Many people were filled with righteous indignation, thinking that Glorious Star Productions was too shameless. They used to say that the Limit Challenge had copied their High Ability Challenge, and now they were playing the plagiarism game themselves. However, Yang Yi stopped them from having a war of words with Glorious Star Productions. Looking at their fixed lineup, do you think they can pull off as many tricks as are the Limit Challenge? I think that their program looks interesting, but the result won't be very good. Even if it's good, it won't be as good as are the Limit Challenge. There's no need to spend too much effort on it. Instead of arguing with them, why don't we spend more effort on our program? Of the 6 fixed members of the Limit Challenge, 3 of them were young people who were not very famous in the beginning, and the 6 of them were not considered handsome or pretty. Yang Huan was considered pretty, but there was still a big gap between her and the idols and actresses. However, they had different personalities and were especially suited to the rhythm of variety shows. They could chat happily with any two of them, and different pairings could create different sparks. More importantly, none of the 6 of them slacked off during the recording of the program. Even famous stars like Dan Hongkue and Jie Yuchen, actors who were worth tens of millions or even hundreds of millions, put their lives on the line in the Limit Challenge, let alone the other 3 young people. How could a program recorded like this not be exciting? Looking at the fixed members of the Great Travel Challenge, almost all of them were popular celebrities, and more than half of them were idols. Yang Yi knew that they were no threat with their petite bodies. Then what's the new program you mentioned just now? Compared to the Limit Challenge, which one is more exciting? Meng Fanqing asked, perplexed. Using the Limit Challenge as a comparison, it seemed like Meng Fanqing was still brooding about missing out on this great program. Compared to the Limit Challenge? What's there to compare? One is a reality show, the other is a music variety show. Yin Yangfeng said with a smile. But I can tell you, old brother Meng, this program is just as exciting. Just like the Limit Challenge, it will change the structure of music variety shows. If you trust me, China Star Productions and the Capital Television Station will work together again and do something big. Although Meng Fanqing was drunk, his mind was still very clear. He was not so easily persuaded. He picked up a big mouthful of food to suppress his drunkenness and extended his arm to stop Yin Yangfeng from pouring more wine for him. It's not easy to make a music variety show. We already have the elite chart of new songs and these few music shows. Are you sure your show can surpass them? Of course, I'm talking about a revolutionary reform, Yin Yangfeng said proudly. In fact, Yin Yangfeng had seen the plan that the team had come up with. It was indeed interesting, but Yin Yangfeng could not tell if it would be successful. After all, there had been very few new music-related variety shows in recent years, so the market prospects were uncertain. However, in front of Meng Fanqing, he had to show a confident look. You've made me curious. What is your program like? Meng Fanqing asked. Yin Yangfeng smiled and said, let's do it tomorrow. I'll bring the proposal to your office tomorrow, and we'll talk about the program. Now was not the right time because there were still some confidentiality agreements to be signed. Meng Fanqing nodded lightly. Old brother Meng, don't forget your promise. As long as our program is exciting enough, you have to help us make time for Friday's primetime slot. Yin Yangfeng said worriedly. Of course, but the prerequisite is that it must be exciting enough. Meng Fanqing was drunk, but not drunk. He shook his wine glass and said with a smile. Chapter 768. Yang Yi had a lot of ideas for music programs, but the main purpose of this program was to support Thousand Miles Chuanshu, who was about to graduate and debut. Of course, those chores were taken care of by his subordinates. In Yang Yi's eyes, the most important thing now was Xixi primary school entrance exam. Huijia Primary School's entrance exam was set for the second weekend in June. Early in the morning, the 5 families gathered together. Yang Yi even drove his RV out to give the mothers a place to rest. The car can only be parked further away. Right now, the street in front of us is completely blocked. There are too many families who came to take the exam. Yang Yi drove and found a spot 2 streets away to park the RV. The 2 intersecting roads in front of them were obviously all cars going to Huijia Primary School. Cars, taxis, and even motorcycles blocked the road. The traffic police came to help guide the traffic. Motorcycles are also here. Didn't they say that motorcycles are banned? Yang Gua sat in the passenger seat and asked puzzledly. Banning motorcycles? That's impossible. Nan Yun shook his head and pointed at the country. It's said that the superiors follow the example of the subordinates. But in the end, the superiors have policies and the subordinates have countermeasures. Lance Haokai's wording was much gentler. He said with a smile. After all, the old city area's traffic and economic conditions are not as good as the coastal area. Without motorcycles, it's really inconvenient for the people to go in and out. That's right. Especially in the village in the city, the road is too narrow for cars to drive in. Only motorcycles can be used. Yang Yi deeply understood. It was time to leave for the exam. Shishi and the others were saying goodbye to their mothers. Mom, I'm a little scared. Shishi hugged her mother's hand and whispered her feelings. She was embarrassed to say it in front of her friends. After all, it was her first exam. The little girl had not seen it. But subconsciously, she had realized that this thing was troublesome. It's okay. Shishi, you're great. Believe in yourself. Murphy encouraged her. Mom and your brother are waiting for you to come back from the exam and tell us the story of your exam. Look, your brother is also cheering for you. Murphy gently lifted Tong Tong's arm and shook it at Shishi. At this moment, Tong Tong was playing with a silver chain on his mother's clothes. After being disturbed by his mother, he looked at his hands and the chain and pendant that he was playing with. He opened his mouth and revealed a charming smile. Hee all right. Shishi seemed to be infected by her brother's smile. Her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Mom, then you have to wait here for me and Papa to come back. Yes, I will. Murphy nodded with a smile. Mo Fei thought that Cece had finished talking, but she didn't expect that the little girl still asked, Mama, you said that I am the best, right? Yes, you're smart and cute. Those teachers will definitely like you. So as long as you bravely take the exam, you don't have to be afraid of anything. You'll answer whatever they ask. You'll definitely do well. Murphy helplessly continued to encourage her. Then can I get a big little red flower? Shishi blinked her big bright eyes and asked. Was there an end to this? Fortunately, Yang Yi, who had parked the car, came over. He squatted down and reached out to tidy up Shishi's collar. He said softly, It depends on how you perform, but Dad thinks that Shishi will definitely get a little red flower. When the time comes, Dad will hold it for you and give it to you when we get home. Today, Mo Fei dressed Cece up very much like how she dressed as a primary school student in The Fugitive. She wore a shirt and a skirt, and a small knitted jacket over the shirt. It looked simple and decent. She also wore a red and black checkered dress, white socks and black shoes. This outfit was simple and appropriate, giving people a refreshing feeling. Moreover, when Cece wore it, it gave people a lovely liveliness and sweetness. Why are you giving it to me when we get home? Shishi asked, puzzled. Yang Yi moved closer to Shishi's ear and whispered to her. Because Dad is worried that if the teacher only gives you a little red flower and doesn't give it to Xian and the others, Xian and the others will be sad when they see it. So, Dad will give it to you when we get home. That way they won't be able to see it. Of course, the real reason was that he still had to go back and make a little red flower for his daughter. I understand. The little girl seemed to have received some secret from her father. She hugged her father's neck and giggled quietly, not daring to let her little friends see. Aya, are you all still going or not? Beside them, the most carefree Chen Shiryan didn't even want to say goodbye to her mother. Impatiently waiting, she started to shout loudly. Haha. The adults all laughed, which slightly diluted the tension in their hearts. If they didn't know that this exam was just a formality, the fathers might have been even more nervous. Even so, Lans Hao Kai still couldn't help but wipe away the sweat on his forehead. Boss Lan really hated exams. The 5 fathers led their 5 children through the crowded streets towards Huijia Primary School. Along the way, there were many parents and children like them. Some were led by their mothers, some were led by their fathers, and some were led by their whole families. Even their grandparents had joined them. Yang Yi was a big star, but right now mixed in with the crowd, he was just an ordinary person. No one would pay attention to him. Today, the children were the main characters. Shishi's little hand was held by her father, so she didn't lack a sense of security. Her little head turned back and forth, looking around curiously. Especially after they entered the school. Shishi felt that there were so many new things that she couldn't take them all in. There were so many places that were different from kindergarten. The spacious school grounds, the spacious square, the tall teaching buildings, the tall flag-raising platform. There were also many sports equipment such as the ping-pong table, basketball hoop, badminton net, and so on. Shishi had never seen these things in kindergarten. When we come back from Grandpa's house, you, Xian, Chi-Chi, Shiryan, and Nan Zhaoyu will be able to study here in the future. Yang Yi saw his daughter's mesmerized expression and put his arm around her shoulders, patting her gently as he said gently, "This was a primary school. A bigger, more beautiful place." While waiting, Cece and a few of her friends gathered together. They chattered about their discoveries, and the excited expressions on their faces showed their yearning in their hearts. Of course, this was a rather simple thought. The little ones still didn't know that after entering primary school, there would be a lot of homework to learn. It would no longer be like kindergarten, where they could play every day. After a while, many teachers came down from the administration building to help guide the parents in an orderly manner, bringing their children to their respective waiting rooms to wait for the exam to begin. Perhaps because they were all gathered together for registration, Yang Yi and the others were also brought to a classroom. Parents of Lans Haokai and little Lan Xian, please prepare yourselves. Your exam will begin in 10 minutes. Later, there will be invigilators bringing you to the exam. Parents and children will be separated, but the exam time will be the same. The children will be interviewed in one classroom, while the parents will be doing questions in another classroom. After finishing the questions, you can bring your children home. The teacher in charge of maintaining order explained with a smile. Ah, we're the first? Boss Lan, who hadn't mentally prepared himself, was dumbfounded. Small beads of sweat appeared on his broad forehead. Chapter 769. How did he become the first one to go to the execution ground? Yang Yi and the other fathers all looked at Lans Haokai, only to see him sullenly standing up and asking, "Teacher, please excuse me. Wasn't I at the back of the queue at the entrance? How did I become the first one?" The queue at the entrance is not used as a reference for the order of the exam. In order to ensure the fairness of the exam, we will randomly arrange the queue before the exam, and you just happen to be the first one. The teacher in the waiting room explained politely. The so-called fairness was actually just a facade. Yang Yi knew that before the final admission list was announced, there was room for under-the-table manipulation. However, Huijia Primary School was considered to be fine. After all, it was basically fair, and only a few privileged families could take advantage of this loophole. It couldn't be helped. Lans Haokai was unhappy, but he couldn't vent his anger on the other party. He resentfully walked back to Yang Yi's side and prepared to wait for 10 minutes before being brought to the examination hall by the teacher in the waiting room. Compared to Lans Haokai, Lan Xian was much calmer. She didn't seem to have realized that she was about to go for an interview, and she was still chatting with Shishi and the others excitedly. "I've seen it on TV. They're all tall uncles, and they can throw the ball far, far away." Shishi gestured with her hands, but it seemed to be impossible to describe the distance that she was talking about. "My dad likes to watch football. It's played with the feet, not the hands. It's against the rules if you use your hands," Chun Shuryan said excitedly. "I have a football at home. Do you guys want to play?" However, this appeal did not receive any enthusiastic response from her friends. Nan Jiayu lacked interest in sports. Young Luoqi's brows drooped as she worriedly said, "Playing basketball is very tiring. My dad sweats a lot when he plays basketball." "I don't like tiring, it's not fun." Lan Xian decisively shook her head. Yang Yi and the others did not know whether to laugh or cry as they comforted Lans Haokai. Chen Guoqiang chuckled. "It's fine. Didn't we say that it's just a formality? The sooner we finish the exam, the sooner we can leave." "Don't say that out loud," Yang Guo complained. "It's not good for the child to hear it." Yang Yi patted Lans Haokai's shoulder and said with a smile, "After the exam, I don't think you can come back to the waiting room. You can go back to the car and wait for us." Lans Haokai was only a little flustered at first, but after all, he was also a person who had seen the world, so he quickly calmed down. He waved his hand and said, "It's boring to go back to the car. I'll see how it goes later. If you guys aren't back yet, I'll go with those who came back earlier and bring them to the restaurant to order something to eat." 10 minutes later, Lans Haokai and Lan Xian followed the teacher to the examination room. "Xian air is so generous. Look at her, she's not afraid at all." Yang Guo and Yang Yi sighed. "That's right. Don't you know whose daughter she is?" Chen Guoqiang shook his head. However, this was just a show. Yang Yi and the others didn't know that Lan Xian's calmness was actually based on the fact that she didn't realize that she was going to take the exam. They also didn't know that when the parents and children were about to be separated, Lan Xian, who only realized what was going on, burst into tears. Lan's Hao Kai comforted her for a long time before she calmed down. In the end, when she sat in front of the interview teachers, she was scared and cried again. Of course, this kind of situation was very common in the entrance exam of Huijia Primary School. In this part, there were no deductions or bonus points. The experienced interview teachers patiently comforted Lan Xian and finally completed the bumpy interview. This was also the reason why the personality test time for adults was not short, and the interview time for children was also long. They had already reserved time to comfort the children. However, although there were no deductions or bonus points, if the children were brave, like Chun Shiyan who was careless, they would leave a good impression on the teachers. After the interview, the teachers needed to make a comprehensive comment on the children's performance, and this good impression would definitely affect this part. Yang Yi and Shishi's exam order was the 6th among all the families in the waiting room, which was about the middle and the back. When it was their turn, Yang Yi squatted down and helped his daughter tidy up her clothes again. "Papa, is it our turn?" Shishi crossed her 2 small hands in front of her body, looking very well behaved. "Yes. Weren't you talking about Xian Air and Chi-Chi just now? We'll be able to see them after the exam." Yang Yi smiled and steered the conversation towards a more relaxed direction. "Okay," Shishi obediently responded, but the little girl was not particularly happy. Her willow leaf-like slender eyebrows were slightly wrinkled, and she opened her arms and hugged her father's neck, as if looking for support. "Don't be nervous, Shishi, come on." Nandiyun patted his dull son. He smiled and encouraged Shishi. Shishi snuggled in her father's arms and smiled at Uncle Nan with some embarrassment. Yang Yi knew that his daughter was nervous, and softly encouraged her. "It's okay, you are the best. Dad always believes in you. After you go in, you can chat with the teachers. You are usually so talkative, you can boldly tell them." But I don't know them." Shishi pouted her small mouth a little aggrieved and said sadly. "You can think of them as Teacher Mu, Teacher Shen and Teacher Kai." Yang Yi said with a smile. "Is that right? And you don't have to worry, these teachers are super good people. If you speak well, they will praise you. If you don't, they will not blame you, but will comfort you." These were the experiences passed down by Guozi. If I speak well, Papa, the teacher will give me a little red flower, right?" Shishi remembered the question she asked before. She was not relieved and repeated it. Yang Yi patiently accompanied Shishi to talk for a while. Finally, the teacher came. When they arrived at the corridor, the teacher told them that Yang Yi would go upstairs to the 509 examination room to take the written test, and she would take Shishi to the interview room. Finally, when it was time to face the test, Yang Yi found that Shishi was nervous again. The little girl tightly grasped one of her father's fingers, pursed her small mouth, and looked at her father with a wronged look in her big eyes, unwilling to separate. "It doesn't matter, you can see your father in half an hour." "Half an hour, right?" Yang Yi looked at the teacher who had guided him. She was a female teacher in her 30s. "If you are fast, it won't take half an hour, you can come out in 20 minutes. She affectionately smiled at Shishi and said, "Little girl, believe me, you will see your father soon. Come, give me a fist bump, I believe you will be great." Yang Yi raised his big fist and said softly. In fact, Shishi was very smart, she knew everything. She also knew that no matter what, she still had to take the exam and face difficulties. But after all, she was still young and a girl. At this time, she wanted to stick to her father a little longer. She wanted to leave him a little later. At this time, she still very cleverly stretched out her small fist and bumped it with her father's big fist. "Good girl. I believe your performance will be great." The female teacher was not stingy with her praise. She was used to coaxing these children. She knew what words they liked to hear. However, Shishi was not satisfied. She did not withdraw her small fist, but stretched out her little pinky, and softly said to her father, "Pinky promise." And pinky promise. Yang Yi smiled and pinky promise with her. "Papa, then you have to wait for me." Shishi pulled her father's finger and said seriously, "And I will wait for you." Yang Yi nodded. She was finally willing to follow the teacher to take the exam. Yang Yi looked at his daughter's back, secretly relieved. To tell the truth, Yang Yi was still a little surprised. When he saw she was so nervous in the waiting room, he thought that she would cry all the way like Yang Luoqi. But Yang Yi did not expect his daughter to be so strong, although she relied on him. She was very brave when she held the teacher's hand. However, Yang Yi began to be nervous. He was not worried about his exam. In the 509 examination room, Yang Yi calmly scribbled on the answer sheet. His speed was very fast, unlike other parents who slowly pondered one question after another. He basically had the answer with a glance. But in the process of doing the questions, Yang Yi was still worried about Xixi. How is Xixi now? When she faced the teacher's question, was she nervous? Or did she answer the teacher's question? Is she coming out now? No, I have to do it faster. I don't want Xixi to come out and not see her father. She will be disappointed. Chapter 770. After saying goodbye to her father, Xixi was held by the teacher's hand and brought to a classroom. The teacher let go of her hand. At this moment, the little girl's thin body looked a little weak and helpless against the backdrop of the big classroom. Xixi also stood there a little timidly, not knowing what to do. Only her big bright eyes blinked, her long eyelashes fluttered, revealing some curiosity in her nervousness. She saw some pictures pasted in the classroom, as well as the lively and interesting chalk drawings on the blackboard behind. Of course, there were also 4 teachers, 2 men and 2 women, sitting in the middle and smiling at her. Those drawings were very interesting. They could share some of the nervousness in Xixi's heart. Hello, little Yangxi. An older female teacher in the middle smiled amiably and greeted Xixi. Xixi was still very nervous. However, she had received a good education since she was young. When Xixi heard others say hello to her, she subconsciously raised her little head and looked at the other party. The little girl hesitated for a moment and said softly, "Hello." Xixi's voice was very soft, like a mosquito's. She was timid and had a kind of tenderness that made people pity her. "Come sit down first. Let's have a chat, okay?" The female teacher stood up and gently held Xixi's hand. She led her to the table opposite them and sat down. She even pulled a chair for her. "Little Yangxi, what do your parents, mother, or friends call you?" "Oh right, I haven't introduced myself yet. My surname is Kai. You can call me Teacher Kai," Teacher Kai said with a smile. Teacher Kai was the chief examiner. She was mainly responsible for chatting with the child. The other 3 teachers were responsible for maintaining a smile, observing, and recording. Only one female teacher was allowed to chat with the child. This could reduce the fear in the child's heart. It had to be said that Teacher Kai was indeed experienced. A few simple intimate actions had closed the distance between her and Xixi's heart. And there was another reason. This teacher's surname was also Kai. Xixi, who was used to her kindergarten's Teacher Kai, suddenly felt much more familiar. Xixi hesitated for a moment and said softly, They call me Xixi." "Very good. Then Teacher Kai will also call you Xixi. Is that okay?" Teacher Kai smiled. Xixi nodded. "Xixi, Teacher Kai is going to test you now. Do you know the names of your parents?" Teacher Kai didn't return to her seat. Instead, she pulled a chair beside Xixi and sat down close to her. She turned her face and asked with a smile. This question was very simple. Xixi straightened her chest a little confidently and raised her voice a little. "I know. My papa's name is Yang Yi. My mom's name is Murphy." "Excellent." Teacher Kai gave Xixi a thumbs up and praised her. He had been praised. Xixi was a little embarrassed and smiled shyly. This was the first time she had smiled since she walked in. The sorrowful Dayu revealed a shy smile that melted one's heart. It didn't seem that difficult. Xixi gradually got into the mood after her nervousness was relieved. "Okay, Xixi, have you gone to kindergarten?" Teacher Kai continued to chat with Xixi. "Yes, I went to kindergarten yesterday, but I didn't go to kindergarten today because it's the weekend. I don't have to go to kindergarten on the weekend," Xixi explained. This time, not only did she speak clearly, but she also added a lot of information on her own. as if she was worried that Teacher Kai didn't know. Teacher Kai was a little surprised by the change in Xixi performance. Previously, she had thought that Xixi was a particularly introverted girl who needed to be coaxed slowly in order to communicate with her. However, she didn't expect that with just a few questions, Xixi would answer more questions than she did. Then, can you tell me what you learned from the kindergarten teachers? Teacher Kai asked. It seemed that this question wasn't difficult to ask. Of course, I learned a lot. Xixi was in high spirits. She counted with her little fingers and said, I learned how to dance. I dance very well. Teacher Shin even gave me a little red flower. Xixi didn't notice that a few teachers who were observing were scribbling on a piece of paper. For example, in the area of expressiveness, they had scribbled logical and eloquent boxes, and there were also columns for personality, thinking ability, and so on. Well, other than dancing and origami, I know how to fold a frog, hee. Xixi relaxed and even took the initiative to smile at Teacher Kai. This time she didn't wait for Teacher Kai to ask and said, I also learned English. Teacher Kai taught me English. The little girl remembered this interesting coincidence and couldn't wait to grab Teacher Kai's hand. She shook it and said, Teacher Kai, our teacher is also called Teacher Kai. Teacher Kai didn't mind Xixi's overstepping. Instead, she looked at the little girl's sweet smile and loved her very much. You learned English as well? That's amazing. How much English have you learned? Teacher Kai asked with a smile. Can you perform for Teacher Kai? How much English had she learned? Xixi couldn't answer this question. What kind of performance? Xixi asked, puzzled. Just let me see how much English you've learned. Teacher Kai explained gently. For example, you should know how to say apple in English, right? I know. Apple is apple. Xixi answered happily. She was full of pride to be able to answer Teacher Kai's question. Then let me ask you a difficult question. What do you say to a puppy? Teacher Kai asked with a smile. Initially, Teacher Kai thought that if Xixi could answer dog, she would be very satisfied. However, Xixi gave her a better answer. Puppy. Teacher Kai actually taught English. Xixi's answer sparked her curiosity about Xixi's English. She tried to ask more words, and even tried to use daily conversation. As a result, 5 minutes later, in the examination room, Teacher Kai and the other 3 teachers were dumbfounded. What the F***ck? Where did this child come from? Her oral English was better than theirs. Seeing someone else talking to Teacher Kai fluently in English, the 2 male teachers looked at each other in shame. One of them was a language teacher, and the other was a math teacher. They had long forgotten English. Now they couldn't understand what the kindergarten kid was saying. Xixi, did you learn English from your Teacher Kai in kindergarten? If it weren't for the Abbott exam, Teacher Kai really wanted to ask which kindergarten Xixi was in. She was so amazing. And my papa and mom can speak English too, Xixi said proudly, puffing out her small chest. It turned out that Teacher Kai found a little comfort because of the family atmosphere. Okay, next question. Teacher Kai felt that she should ask something else. Xixi, can you tell me something that made you the happiest? Describe it in detail. The 3 teachers who made the observation unanimously gave Xixi a full score on the English proficiency scale of 1 to 100 points. Following that, they avoided the sad option and looked at the language organization, ability below. Chapter 771. What would be the happiest thing that happened? Xixi felt that there were many things that made her happy, but it seemed difficult to choose the happiest thing. Then what about the happiest thing? Xixi had an idea. The little girl blinked her big eyes and said obediently, Teacher Kai, let me tell you, Papa, Mama, and my brother are going to Australia to play. Because Lu Weisha went to Australia to play and sent me a picture of a kangaroo. My papa took me to Australia to play. Who is Lu Weisha? Teacher Kai asked curiously when she heard the name of a foreigner. Speaking of Lu Weisha, Xixi said regretfully, Lu Weisha is my good friend, but she went back because her father had to go back to work. However, as she spoke, Xixi became excited again. But Lu Weisha is at her house so we can meet. My father has a computer, so he can call Lu Weisha. That way, I can talk to Lu Weisha. Teacher Kai felt that she had found the reason why Xishi's English was so good. She smiled and asked, "Is Lu Weisha a foreigner? Is she British or American?" "No." Xishi shook her head and said honestly, "Lu Weisha is Swedish." Teacher Kai felt that her worldview was collapsing. She only knew a few American foreign teachers hired by Huijia Primary School. How could a child know Swedish people? Ahem. Teacher Kai coughed and asked a question that she later regretted. "Xishi, do you communicate with Lu Weisha in English?" Xishi nodded and then shook her head. She tried to explain to Teacher Kai, who had a lot of questions. "No, we speak English, but I can speak Swedish with Lu Weisha, and Lu Weisha can speak Chinese." Hee, Teacher Kai, Lu Weisha couldn't speak Chinese before. Now she can speak it well. She's super good. You're super good too. When Teacher Kai heard Xishi say that she could speak Swedish, she was already kneeling down. She couldn't help but complain in her heart. Who is this child? How can she be so amazing? And how can she do it, be so smart and cute? Aren't geniuses all are reclusive? The other three teachers were stunned and even numb. Of course, they were also complaining in their hearts. "Teacher Kai, this is not a question in the exam. Why are you asking so many questions?" Teacher Kai, who had suffered a blow, didn't want to confirm how much Swedish she could speak. She couldn't understand it anyway, so she couldn't confirm it. Teacher Kai forced a smile and said, "Okay, Xishi, continue talking about the things that make you happy." When Xishi mentioned kangaroos just now, the teachers all felt that Shishi's happiest thing should be seeing kangaroos in Australia. But that wasn't what Xishi wanted to talk about. The little girl talked a lot, and finally talked about how she and her father went to the sea to find big fish. There were so many dolphins. They would jump up like this. Oh, jump down, jump up, jump down. Cece wasn't trying to be funny at all. The little girl even used her little hands with a serious expression to make a dolphin jump on the surface of the sea. My papa said that dolphins are also big fish, because Cece talked about a lot of popular science again. She had heard all of this from her father. The little girl might not remember all of it, but she could still repeat a lot of it. Teacher Kai was a very nice person. Although she had suffered a blow, and even began to doubt whether her smart and cute child was a little stupid compared to the little girl in front of her, her attitude toward Xishi was still gentle and patient as always. Even though Xishi said a lot of nonsense when she was talking about her happy things, Teacher Kai didn't feel annoyed and listened to her with a smile. "So the happiest thing that you felt was going to the sea with your father and seeing dolphins, right?" Teacher Kai summed it up with one sentence. Xishi nodded. "Very good. You told Teacher Kai a very interesting story." Teacher Kai gave Xishi a thumbs up again. Xishi smiled sweetly. She sat on the chair, twisted her little butt, and looked at Teacher Kai expectantly. She was somewhat unsatisfied with the next question. Was this an exam? No, the exam had long been forgotten by Xishi. Now Xishi felt that Teacher Kai was as good as her kindergarten teacher. They both liked to listen to her stories. Teacher Kai looked at the time and said, "Okay, Xishi, Teacher Kai is going to ask the last question. After you answer this question, the exam will be over. The question is, let's say you go shopping with your parents." Xishi blinked her big eyes and listened attentively to the question. Hearing this, the little girl's eyes lit up and she smiled happily. She liked shopping. And if she went shopping with her father would buy her a lot of teddy bears. However, Teacher Kai didn't ask this question this time. She talked about a question that Xishi had never encountered or even thought about. If you accidentally got lost with your parents and couldn't find them in a very big shopping mall, what would you do? Xishi was stunned. Xishi really didn't understand this question. Yang Yi was a big idiot. He had never thought of teaching Xishi this question. But it was also true. Yang Yi usually took Xishi out and put his daughter's matter first. He had never thought of the problem of Xishi getting lost. More than 10 minutes later, Yang Yi picked up Xishi with the help of the teacher. On the way back to the RV, Xishi told her father somewhat unhappily that she didn't know how to answer this question. Later, Teacher Kai said that I could go to the security guard uncle. Xishi pouted and said. Teacher Kai kindly told Xishi that it didn't matter if she couldn't answer this question, but she had to know how to deal with emergencies in the future. In addition to going to the security guard uncle, Teacher Kai also taught Shishi to go to the front desk and ask for a missing person broadcast. She also had to pay attention to the content of the broadcast. Of course, Shishi didn't understand the concept of a missing person broadcast at all, so she didn't say it out loud. Yang Yi touched his nose. He also realized his negligence. Besides blaming himself, he quickly thought of a solution. You can do this too. You can tell others that I got lost with my father. Can you lend me your phone to call my father? Yang Yi said. You have to remember my father's phone number. 13XXX. Yang Yi read out a string of numbers. Do you remember? Shishi's memory was good. She could repeat it after hearing it twice. Of course, Yang Yi would test Shishi again in the future to deepen her memory. Wait, you can't just borrow someone's phone because you don't know if he's a good person or a bad person. You can go to a public phone booth, but that won't work. Forget it. When I go back, I'll make you a portable phone. Next time, when you go out, you can hang it on your body. That way, if anything happens, you can call me, Yang Yi said. The more he thought about it, the more new ideas popped up. For example, he could take out the chip from the SIM card and make a phone disguised as a necklace. Shishi only needed to press a button on the phone, and the necklace would automatically call him. Oh right, he could also add a GPS function. Even if Shishi didn't call him, he could still find her through the GPS function. Not only would it come in handy if Shishi got lost, but if Shishi was in danger, he could also find her in time. Yes, he could also make one for Murphy and Tong Tong. Yang Yi could disguise this thing as a wooden necklace. The more Yang Yi thought about it, the more he felt that these things were necessary. Even if life was very peaceful now, Yang Yi had to be vigilant in times of peace. Yang Yi didn't notice that Shishi was actually more concerned about her not being able to answer the question. Papa, did I do a bad job? Teacher didn't give me a little red flower? Shishi waited for her father to finish his self-satisfaction, pouted her little mouth, and asked with grievance. Ah. Yang Yi came back to his senses and said with a smile. How could that be? You did a good job. Didn't the teacher just say that you were very obedient? Teacher Kai also said that I was very smart. Shishi was just a little happy, but then she regretted. But I didn't answer Teacher Kai's question. No one is perfect. You worked hard and answered so many questions. You did a good job, so you deserve a reward. Yang Yi comforted. Teacher Kai said that you were smart, of course. She also gave Papa a little red flower and told Papa to give it to you when we get home. Yang Yi still didn't know that his daughter had already shocked the examiners and teachers. He was still worried that Shishi really didn't perform well enough and blamed herself too much in his heart. In his opinion, Shishi had already performed very well. At such a young age, she faced the exam alone and didn't cry. When they got home, he folded a little red flower for her to reward her. Shishi didn't doubt him. She hugged her father's neck in surprise and asked excitedly, Really? Really, but remember. Before Yang Yi could finish, Shishi finished his words. I know. He saw the little girl giggling, and her eyes were curved. She put her little finger in front of her mouth and shushed him. Don't tell Xian Air and the others. Great. Come give Papa a kiss, Mua. Chapter 772. Shishi is here too. Yang Yi carried Shishi to the private room of the restaurant. Wu Yu, who had sharp eyes, smiled and clapped her hands. Everyone was cheering for the return of a hero. This made Shishi, who was still immersed in the emotions of having a secret with her father, a little shy. She turned her head and hid in her father's arms, laughing shyly in her father's neck. Come down and let Mom have a look. Murphy opened one hand. Only then did Cece jump out of her father's arms and run over to her mother. Yang Luochi wandered over, and also rubbed against Murphy to listen to Shishi's story. Lan Xian was the only one who was still eating. Her mouth was stuffed to the brim, and she looked at Cece while patting the chair beside her while mumbling something. She was probably trying to get Cece to sit beside her. How was it? How did Shishi do? Lans Hao Kai asked as he held the teapot, and wobbled over to pour tea for Yang Yi. She was okay. but she said she didn't know how to answer a question. She was a little sad. Yang Yi smiled. Xi and Air went to the interview and cried half the time. I don't know what to say to her. Lance Haokai shook his head, but he wasn't worried. Even if she didn't do well, she wouldn't fail. Young Luoqi was the same. The little girl's eyes were still red. What question did she not know how to answer? Wu Yu asked curiously. Yang Yi told them. Immediately, the fathers and mothers said that this question was very good. They should let the children learn how to deal with some special situations. They talked and laughed, but Chen Shiyun's mother and Nan Zhaoyu's mother didn't talk so enthusiastically. After all, they were still anxiously waiting. When they returned home in the afternoon, and only Yang Yi and his family were left, Yang Yi said to Murphy proudly, Actually, I was too embarrassed to say this in front of them. Among these children, I think Shishi performed the best. Chen Shiyun didn't cry either, did she? Murphy laughed. It's not just that she doesn't cry. I heard from Shishi that she answers questions very well. Yang Yi proudly raised his eyebrows and said, You also know that your daughter is a chatterbox. I didn't expect her to be so chatty with the examiner during her first exam and interview. She kept talking nonstop. I'm guessing that the examiner was about to faint from her chatter. The teacher must be thinking, whose child is this? Am I the one testing her, or is she the one testing me? Why are you talking so much? Yang Yi chuckled. What Yang Yi didn't know was that his daughter had embarrassed the teacher so much that he was speechless. Look at how proud you are. Why didn't I see you being praised by the teacher? Murphy laughed. Mine is different. Mine is a written exam, and I fill in the answer sheet. Yang Yi explained. Shishi and the other children went for the interview one by one, and several teachers faced each other. We are all parents in the same round of the exam, and we are all gathered in the same classroom to do the questions. Papa, where is the little red flower that Teacher Kai gave me? At this moment, Shishi, who hadn't changed her clothes, ran back from the side hall after playing with Xiao Guai and the others. I want to show it to my brother. Mom, take Shishi to change her clothes first. Shishi, Papa will bring it to you right away. After Yang Yi finished speaking, he winked at Murphy and asked Murphy to delay for a while. He was going to make little red flowers for Shishi. Yang Huan had been in a dilemma recently. Although the filming of the Limit Challenge had been smooth sailing, she had also turned from an unknown film school student into a well-known and beloved Wonder Woman through this program. She had even taken on a few big commercials. Even senior sister Qin Wen was a little envious of her fame. However, Yang Huan had not achieved much in her career as an actress. Guozi had several movies released, and even the movie Fat Agent, which he starred in, would be on the big screen this summer. During the summer vacation, Guozi took on several movie contracts and was very busy. However, Yang Yi didn't take any movie contracts. She turned down a movie that asked her to play the leading role, and now she was asked to play the supporting role. Many people, including Yang Yi, tried to persuade her not to play the supporting role. If you really want to play the supporting role, go for the audition and find a few small roles that are suitable for your acting skills. It would be best if they are in ancient costumes, and it would be better if they have martial arts moves. Don't dream of reaching the top in one step. Yang Yi's words made Yang Huan sick of hearing them. Why wouldn't she seize the opportunity? In the film school, many students were waiting for the opportunity to play the leading role, but they couldn't wait for it. Why would she reject the opportunity that was right in front of her? Yang Huan felt sad when she thought about it, especially when she overheard her senior sisters talking about the importance of the leading role when she was eating in the canteen. Yang Huan felt that it was a pity for her to do this. Of course, it was also because Yang Yi was her brother that Yang Huan was not convinced. If it were Yuan Yan or Dan Hongkue who persuaded her, Yang Huan might accept it more easily. However, Yuan Yan and the others were outsiders after all. How could they say anything about Yang Huan's future? This was a strenuous and thankless task. What should I do? Should I continue to play the supporting role this summer vacation? Yang Huan held her cheeks and lay on her stomach on the bed. She was in a dilemma. After all, she was a famous star with millions of fans. If she went to the film school to play some small roles, wouldn't she be laughed at? However, it was indeed the suggestion of many people. Her two best friends, Guozi and Ding Xiang, also suggested that she continue to practice her acting skills in the film school in the capital. After pondering for a while, Yang Huan couldn't come up with a good idea. She turned over on the bed and grabbed the bedside table to call Yang Qing. To be honest, Yang Yi and Yang Qing were both Yang Huan's brothers. However, they had different positions in Yang Huan's heart. Yang Yi was much older than Yang Huan. Moreover, when Yang Huan was growing up, Yang Yi was either serving in the army or traveling around. He didn't have a fixed residence and rarely called home. He only came back once in a while during Chinese New Year. Yang Yi left Yang Huan the memories of her childhood. But Yang Qing was different. Yang Qing was older than Yang Huan, but he grew up with Yang Huan. He really played the role of a reliable older brother. In addition, Yang Qing was gentle and honest, unlike Yang Yi who was strict. In comparison, Yang Yi was more like a father. Naturally, Yang Huan trusted Yang Qing more. Yang Qing was doing well in his hometown. He was in charge of the road construction and mechanized farming in Wadayaku village. When Yang Huan called him, Yang Qing had just returned from outside and was soaking his feet. I don't know much about you celebrities, but I think you should listen to your brother. Who can tell what an outsider says? Only your brother will never hurt you. Yang Qing said to Yang Huan. The problem is it's a rare opportunity. Yang Huan said. Huan, do you remember how your father taught you martial arts when you were young? Although Yang Qing wasn't very educated, he had his own unique wisdom. Martial arts can't be improved overnight. If you want to learn well, you have to practice the horse stance and build a good foundation. You can't rush it. Yang Huan was silent. I think it's the same for your acting. Why do you care how people laugh at you? If you don't practice martial arts, you'll get nothing. We should first train our muscles and bones, hand techniques, footwork, breathing, etc. Then we can practice our dodging and shifting, and then we can practice our complicated moves. Not only will this be twice the result with half the effort, it will also be more solid step by step. It will be better than people who practice impatiently. Yang Qing saw that she didn't speak, so he continued to persuade her. Yang Qing's patient persuasion was more effective. Although Yang Qing didn't say anything concrete, and he really didn't know much about movies and the entertainment industry, what Yang Qing said was very reasonable. It made Yang Huan, who was a little stubborn, come out. I understand, brother. I'll be more patient and work harder. Yang Huan said gratefully. Most importantly, you have to listen to your brother. Don't forget that he guided you on this path. He helped you achieve what you have today. You should listen to him, Yang Qing said. Okay. Yang Huan knew that she should be grateful to Yang Yi. Chapter 773. After taking the exam of Huijia Primary School, Shishi was considered to be half a step into elementary school, although the results were not out yet. Of course, she was also about to graduate for the first time in her life. Kindergarten graduation. Normally, kindergarten graduation didn't receive any special treatment, but Springfield Kindergarten was different. They would make a commemorative album, which included photos of all the children and teachers in the upper class, as well as some wonderful photos of activities in the kindergarten. This album would be given to each child at the small graduation ceremony, held by Springfield Kindergarten as a souvenir. We should also make something for Teacher Mu, Teacher Shin, and Teacher Kai as a souvenir, to thank them for their careful teaching in the past 2 years, don't you think so? That evening, when Shishi came back from kindergarten, Yang Yi suggested. This was called thanking the teachers for their kindness. Yang Yi didn't like to make it too complicated, as it was full of the smell of money. Making handicrafts and giving them to Shishi's teachers could not only let Shishi participate in it, but also express Shishi's feelings well. It was much more meaningful than treating them to a meal. Shishi nodded briskly. She propped herself up on the sofa, and her big eyes showed great interest. She asked, Then Papa, what should we make? What handicrafts do you want to give to the teachers? Yang Yi asked. This was too difficult for Shishi. How could a little girl have any good ideas? Well, Papa, you can make a little red horse, so that you can give it to the teachers. Shishi tilted her little head, thinking and pouting her little mouth. That won't do. You have to make it. Papa can help. Papa has almost finished making the little red horse, so it can't be considered as yours. Moreover, this is a specialty of Lu Weishao's hometown, so it's not appropriate for us to give it to her. Yang Yi laughed. But okay. Then what should we make? Xixi hesitated for a while, and then kicked the ball back to her father. This was indeed a difficult problem. Murphy listened and said with a smile, How about making a pen holder? I used to make it when I was a child. There are many ways, such as taking a roll of paper in the middle, wrapping it with a hemp rope, and decorating it. This can make a pen holder, or you can take an unwanted mat, make a section and roll it up. Speaking of the handicrafts that she used to play with in the United States when she was a child, Mo Fei was completely interested. She said a lot of things excitedly, not only because it's easier to make, but also because the circle around it can be used for Cece to draw, or we can make some other decorations. Murphy remembered the gossip Yang Yi had told her about Guozi and Ding Xiang. She even went to the house to see the seashell birds that Guozi had bought for Ding Xiang. Murphy said happily, We can use seashells to decorate it. When we go to the beach in the coastal area, Xixi, you can personally find some beautiful seashells on the beach, and we can paste them on it. This pen holder will become even more beautiful. Cece was listening happily at the side. The little girl waited for her mother to stop for a while before she interrupted with a smile. Mama, I know. Teacher will like it more if I draw on it, right? Yes. That's right. Murphy wanted to continue. However, she still held her mom's hand excitedly, and she said anxiously, Then Mom, can I draw Xiao Guai? Xiao Guai is super cute, and in Teacher Shen likes cats very much. She has 2 cats at home, and I've even seen photos of them. One of them is very, very big, but it's not like Xiao Guai, and it's not black. All right, the little girl was rambling on, and she didn't know where she was going. Yang Yi and Murphy looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Murphy couldn't take back the topic, and in the end, they had to wait for Xixi to finish before Yang Yi took over from Murphy to conclude. All right, we'll make 3 different pen holders for the 3 teachers. All right, sit down. I'm going to announce the specific division of labor now. Yang Yi said. Xixi's eyes lit up. This was one of her favorite segments recently. The little girl walked around nimbly, climbed onto the sofa, and sat next to her mother obediently. She looked at her father and listened attentively. Now I'll appoint your mother as the technical director. She'll be responsible for the technical guidance of the pen holder production. Yang Yi said solemnly. Xixi turned to look at her mother and giggled. Got it. I'm the technical director. Murphy was playful. She held back her laughter, put on a straight face, and nodded solemnly. Then Comrade Xixi. Yang Yi looked at Xixi. Xixi, who turned her head, immediately straightened her little chest. Comrade Xixi will be the artistic director. You'll be responsible for making the pen holder beautiful. Can you complete the difficult task given to you by the organization? Yang Yi held back his laughter and asked solemnly. Yes, I can. Xixi's movements were more serious, but she couldn't look serious. She smiled and said sweetly. Then, your father will be the logistics supervisor. I'll be responsible for preparing the materials for you. Yang Yi waved his hand and ended the important division of labor. What about little brother? Xixi asked as she pointed at Tong Tong, who was sitting on the sofa and holding a toy cart. Tong Tong seemed to have realized that his sister was calling him. When his father and mother looked over, the little guy also raised his little head and looked over. Yeah. Tong Tong liked the feeling of being noticed. He happily waved his other little hand and greeted his sister. However, the little guy didn't sit very firmly. He lost his balance and almost fell back on the sofa. Of course, Murphy supported him in time. After the little guy sat firmly, he giggled even more happily. He even threw away the toy cart and clapped his 2 little hands. This was what Murphy taught him. The little guy could now imitate some simple actions. Little brother will be the quality supervisor. He'll watch us do it. If it's done well, he'll clap his hands. If it's not done well, he won't clap his hands. Yang Yi said with a smile. Okay. Little brother will also have a job. Xixi smiled and slipped off the sofa. She picked up the toy cart that Tong Tong had thrown to the ground and playfully shook it in front of Tong Tong's eyes. Tong Tong blinked his eyes. He quickly realized that his favorite toy was in his sister's hands. The little guy immediately stretched out his little hands and cried, "Ai," wanting to take it back. "Big sister will give it to you. You have to clap your hands for big sister. You can't not like the pen holder that big sister made, okay?" Shishi handed over the toy cart and muttered to Tong Tong. Tong Tong ignored her words. He grabbed the toy cart and stuffed it into his mouth. When he opened his little mouth, 2 half-grown front teeth could be seen. They looked like small grains of rice. Of course, the toy cart was a little big and couldn't be stuffed into it. However, he could gnaw on it. For example, he could gnaw on a tire. When Shishi saw this, she quickly pulled her little brother's hand and shouted, "No, you can't put it in your mouth." Tong Tong's little hand was held down, so he couldn't gnaw on the toy cart. He immediately pouted his little mouth and looked at his mother. "Big sister is right. You can't put the toy in your mouth. Mommy also told you that you can't." Murphy smiled and shook her right index finger at Tong Tong. Tong Tong could understand this gesture. He would definitely feel wronged, but Murphy still insisted on teaching him some things that he shouldn't do. This wasn't just because these actions weren't good. Murphy also taught him this because at the infant stage, Tong Tong's ability to suppress his desires was limited. If he didn't learn how to suppress his desires, he would develop a willful personality in the future. Chapter 774. It was late at night, and Shishi and Tong Tong had already entered their sweet dreams. In the brightly lit study room, Yang Yi was still burying his head in front of his desk, fiddling with some things. Although there were many things on Yang Yi's desk, they were not messy. Some of the components were neatly arranged in a row on a piece of black flannel, and the other small tools were neatly inserted into a cloth bag. The cloth bag was aligned with the black flannel and was of the same length. Knock knock. Someone knocked on the study room door. "Come in," Yang Yi called out without raising his head. He was installing a small screw on the hanging magnifying glass, so he did not have time to get up. Murphy pushed open the door and walked in with a cup of hot water. She walked to Yang Yi's desk. She was familiar with Yang Yi's habits, so she took a coaster from the side and placed the cup of hot water beside Yang Yi. "I saw that you were not up yet, so I came to see you. What time is it?" Yang Yi was intoxicated with the small components and forgot about the time. Only now did he raise his head and look at the clock on the wall. He said in surprise, 11 o'clock, so late?" Murphy looked at the few pieces of wood waste on Yang Yi's desk and laughed. "You are really diligent. We just divided the work tonight, and now you, as the logistics supervisor, can't wait to fulfill your responsibilities?" Murphy obviously misunderstood. These are not prepared for Shishi to make a pen holder. Yang Yi pointed at some of the electronic components on the desk and laughed. "Is there anyone who makes a pen holder like this?" Murphy looked at Yang Yi's desk seriously and asked curiously, "What is this?" "A pendant that can be used for calls and positioning." Yang Yi picked up a finished product on the table. It was a reddish-brown wooden Buddha statue that was hung on a red string. Murphy took it. While listening to the reason why Yang Yi made this pendant, she carefully looked at the handmade pendant made by Yang Yi. The carving of the Buddha statue was very delicate, and the surface was polished very smooth. It did not feel burrs to the touch. She brought it to the tip of her nose, and could even smell a faint fragrance. It was very faint, but Murphy could still smell it. Seeing this, Yang Yi explained with a smile, "This is made of red sandalwood. If you wear it for a long time, it will turn purplish black. It's very beautiful." "You did all this? The Buddha statue is so beautiful." Murphy couldn't help but praise. He of course. "I've been practicing for many years. When I felt lonely in the army, I would take a piece of wood and carve it for fun." Yang Yi lied through his teeth. Of course, Yang Yi was more satisfied with the internal electronic design of the Buddha statue. He proudly showed off in front of Murphy. "Try pinching the Buddha statue up and down. Pinch harder." Murphy did as she was told. Indeed, she had to use a little more force. A strange scene appeared. The Buddha statue's head shrank into its stomach. "Ah!" Murphy was a little scared and almost threw it away. However, she relaxed a little and the Buddha statue returned to normal. What the hell? This is too frightening. Murphy rebuked and hammered Yang Yi's shoulder. However, he took advantage of the situation and pulled her over to sit on his lap. Look. Yang Yi wasn't completely mischievous. He smiled and took out his phone. The phone lit up and an unknown number appeared. This Buddha statue is calling? Murphy was a little surprised. She had already heard Yang Yi explain the meaning of making this Buddha statue. Yes. Yang Yi nodded. He swiped the phone and answered the call. He spoke into the phone. Hello, hello, hello. Almost at the same time, a voice came from the Buddha statue. Murphy's hearing was very good. She could tell that the quality of the voice was average. However, this was a small speaker installed to save space. There was no need to have high standards. However, this was already amazing enough. A Buddha statue actually made a sound. Say something to it, Yang Yi said to Murphy. He set the phone's call to speaker mode. Hello, I'm Murphy. Murphy curiously gave it a try. It was a strange feeling to hold a Buddha statue and speak. However, what surprised Murphy once again was her own voice coming from Yang Yi's phone. It was really a call. It could be used as a phone. Yang Yi took the Buddha statue and pressed it again. The call was hung up. He explained, this Buddha statue can be pressed once to make a call to my phone. Pressing it again means hanging up. Pressing it a third time can make a call, and so on. The battery inside can last for 4 hours. Of course, the SIM card inside had been charged by Yang Yi. But this design of yours is a little too strange. Pressing the Buddha's head into the stomach looks very strange. Murphy was a woman after all. There's a reason for this design. When a normal person picks up this Buddha statue, they would either hold it from the front to the back or grab it from the left and right. Very few would pinch it up and down. This is because there's a hole here that's a hindrance. This reduces the possibility of it being touched by mistake, Yang Yi explained. All right. Murphy could only accept this fact helplessly. It can also perform satellite positioning. Look at my phone. This shows the position of the Buddha statue. Yang Yi introduced the more advanced functions of the Buddha statue to Murphy. So powerful? It can even perform satellite positioning? How do you know so many electronic things? Murphy asked in surprise. Don't you know what I used to do? Yang Yi still used the same excuse. Murphy believed him. She nodded and said, Oh right, you're a special forces soldier. You have to eavesdrop. You should know these things. Yang Yi smiled and continued. Actually, it won't be activated normally. It will only be activated when I press the call button. Even if the call is hung up, the positioning function will still be activated. Only when I bring it home and use this special tool to turn it off will it stop working. Murphy saw Yang Yi take out a wire as thin as a hair and insert it into the Buddha statue's butt. Then the satellite positioning function in the phone lost its signal. This wire was not easy to get. Most people would not be able to find such a wire without customizing it. Even if they poked it with a ballpoint pen, it would be useless. Such a design could, of course, ensure that the positioning function would not be easily discovered by bad people. But it was still the same problem. The action of inserting it into the statues, but was really too. Murphy leaned on the table and laughed. Hey, can't you change your position? It's either the head or the butt. There's no other way. The space inside is limited. This is the only layout I can make for the time being. Yang Yi spread his hands helplessly. So this positioning system will not be activated normally, right? Murphy asked after she managed to slow down her laughter. This was a little personal. Even if they were husband and wife, Murphy was not too willing to be monitored all the time. Yang Yi understood what Murphy meant. He nodded and smiled. Of course, it won't be turned on normally to save power. When it's really necessary, you can turn it on. The main purpose is to be able to find you or she when you're in danger. Of course, you don't have to wear it normally. This is mainly made for she. As for yours, you can wear it when we go on a trip, in case anything happens outside. Yang Yi added to reduce the misunderstanding. Didn't you say you were going to make one for Tao Wu? Murphy said worriedly. If you give it to Tao Wu, how would he know how to activate this Buddha statue? The positioning function is very useful. What if Tao Wu is taken away? I heard that there are many gangs out there that specialize in kidnapping other people's children. You're right. Let me think about this problem. Maybe I need to make an upgraded version for him. Remove the call function and add a program. If I don't touch the switch within 24 hours, it will automatically activate the positioning system. Yang Yi touched his chin and immediately came up with a plan. However, this would require a new circuit design and many tests. It was impossible to make it in one go. Let's go to bed first. I'll do this later, Yang Yi said as he pinched Murphy's smooth face intimately. Chapter 775. At midnight, some people had already fallen asleep with their beautiful wives in their arms, while others had just started to make a living. Actually, he was not right, because the short person in front of her with dyed red hair, wearing leather pants, a sweater, and a huge belt was not a boy, but a cool tomboy girl. But for a girl, with this kind of dressing and a washboard figure, it was relatively safe for her to hang out in places like bars and nightclubs. Su Lu, a girl from the northeast, came to Beijing because she liked to sing and became a member of the Beijing Drifters Army. Of course, she had not made a name for herself after 4 years. Now she was still singing in a bar called Tianya in Beijing. It was the same as 4 years ago, but now she was more experienced and knew how to protect herself. At midnight, Su Lu held her guitar and took the place of the previous singer to sing on stage. For you, I used half a year's savings to cross the sea to see you. That's right, Su Lu sang Murphy's song. A song she liked very much. Of course, the bar's customers also liked to listen to it. Perhaps it was because of the 4 years of practice, Su Lu's singing was very good. In this song, I came across the ocean to see you. She could bite every note very accurately, and every beat was just right. Of course, her voice condition could not be compared to Murphy's. Murphy's voice was clear, and at the same time, it was rich with emotion. Su Lu's voice was slightly low, and did not have Murphy's pure feeling, but it was also very pleasant to listen to, and contained a kind of calmness that made people feel relaxed. Tianya Bar was located in a bustling business district in Beijing, surrounded by office buildings and commercial buildings. Most of the customers who came here to spend money were white-collar workers who had been busy all day, or were lonely at night. Listening to Su Lu's singing was a kind of mental relief for them. Of course, people who knew the industry could also tell that Su Lu's guitar playing and singing skills were also first class. She did not need an accompaniment, and could play the song's accompaniment gently with the guitar. Su Lu sang from midnight to 3 in the morning. When she returned to the lounge at the back, she was surprised to see the bar owner and a man standing together. Brother Ming. Su Lu frowned slightly and greeted him in a low voice. She was going to take the money and go home quietly. Su Lu, let me introduce you. This is Deng Haoran, a friend of mine. The bar owner, Brother Ming, waved at her. Just call me Haozi. Deng Haoran smiled and extended his hand to Su Lu. This man named Deng Haoran was dressed casually. His clothes were clean and tidy, and he looked gentle. He didn't look like a bad guy, but how could a bad guy write the word bad on his face? Su Lu didn't respond. Instead, she looked at the boss. Brother Ming, what's the meaning of this? The owner of this bar, Brother Ming, was actually a good person. She had been singing here for almost a year, and nothing had happened that made her feel disgusted. However, his actions today really made Su Lu feel confused. Brother Ming did not have any bad intentions. He smiled and explained, Haozi is a music broker. There's a program that he wants to talk to you about. Music broker. No one knew where this name came from, but as everyone called it that, it became the name of a special industry. To be more precise, a music broker should be called a quasi-music manager. Why was it quasi-music? Because they didn't have a fixed profession, nor did they work for a management company or individual star. These people had a wide range of connections, and were familiar with the underground singers in their city. They could help to contact some singers with dreams and abilities to participate in some talent shows before the start of some TV station's talent shows. Of course, if the singer they recommended was chosen, they could earn a considerable amount of referral fees from the TV station, or the program's production company. Sulu was no stranger to music brokers. Hearing this, she let down her guard a lot. She looked at Deng Haren beside her. This man was not at all angry at being ignored and questioned. He even extended his hand in a friendly manner. Mr. Deng, why are you looking for me? Sulu shook hands with him, maintaining a sense of distance in her tone. You guys talk first. If there's anything else, come find me, okay? Brother Ming didn't get involved. He smiled and patted Sulu's shoulder, then turned and walked out. Only Sulu and Deng Haren were left in the lounge. Deng Haren was indeed there to talk. After they sat down, he told Sulu about his intentions. Did you see the Beijing TV station's news yesterday? Or today's newspaper? Deng Haren smiled. Sulu shook her head. Alright, it's okay. Let me introduce you. Beijing TV station is going to make a music talent show. Although it doesn't look like a talent show, it's more or less the same. It's called China's Voice. You can check it out later. There's a lot of news about it, Deng Haren said. Looks like he wants me to try out this talent show. Sulu thought to herself. It wasn't that she had never participated in talent shows before. Sometimes, she even had to travel to other cities to participate. However, at that time, she participated based on her own enthusiasm. She wasn't sure if it was a problem with her image or if there was some shady business going on, but she was always eliminated early on. However, Sulu felt that her singing was not as bad as her competitors. Now Sulu was much more rational. She calmly listened to Deng Haren's introduction. Of course, although it's more or less the same as a talent show, this show is still a little different. I heard you sing. I came across the ocean to see you just now. You should know Yang Yi, right? When Deng Haren mentioned that name, he saw a glimmer of light in Sulu's eyes. He knew in his heart that there was hope. He smiled and said, "This show is Yang Yi's idea." His company, China Star Productions, which produced the popular show, The Limit Challenge, collaborated with Beijing TV station to produce this China's Voice. When Sulu heard Yang Yi's name, she did have some reaction. This was normal. Yang Yi had written so many excellent songs. As long as it was a singer, they would want to be favored by him. Based on my experience, Yang Yi's show must have changed a lot. Otherwise, Beijing TV station wouldn't be so supportive of him. This show has even been promoted to a primetime slot on Friday nights. Deng Haren bragged. A new show like this will definitely attract a lot of attention when it's broadcast. If you can pass the auditions and enter the recording segment, you will definitely become popular. Sulu's breathing changed a bit. Deng Haren was still talking nonstop. Everyone has to have some dreams. I see that you're still very young, right? But your singing is very good. You must grab this opportunity and try your best. Don't always think that you're just a regular singer and just muddle through. You must know Yi Qing, right? Don't just look at how popular he is now. A few years ago, before he debuted, he was also a regular singer in a bar. Look at him now, how good is he doing? But I'm not pretty, Sulu said hesitantly. Oh right, if you didn't mention that, I forgot to tell you. At the press conference yesterday, that person, right, Ming Fancheng, the head of variety shows at Beijing TV station, even introduced this show. He said that this show only picks contestants with good singing. The contestants' looks, personal experiences, and stories are all not considered by the judges. Deng Haren changed Meng Fancheng's words from the judges to the judges he was familiar with. Perhaps it was because of his own understanding. Although she still needed to find out more about this show in private, but after hearing Deng Haren's introduction, Sulu was really moved. This show really didn't consider the contestants' looks. Chapter 776. There were talented singers in every world. Even though the entertainment industry in this world was extremely developed, and the average ability and quality of the singers in this world were much higher than in Yang Yi's previous world, there were also idol singers who relied on their good looks to gain fame. There were also talented singers who didn't have the opportunity to stand out because of their bad looks. Yang Yi didn't know what kind of opportunity it would be for a singer like Sulu to appear on his show, which had become popular all over the country once it was introduced in his previous life. Of course, it was still too early to talk about this. While the media was discussing whether Yang Yi's return to the music industry to create a new variety show would be a flop, Yang Yi didn't care at all. On this Saturday afternoon, he brought Xixi to Binhai District's beach to play as if no one else was around. Today, it was just the two of them. Since summer had arrived, as the only beach in Jiangcheng, it had also become the busiest place in Jiangcheng. For safety reasons, Murphy and Tong Tong didn't follow them. "I'm done. Put on your hat." Under a tree by the beach, Yang Yi, who was wearing sunglasses, a white singlet, and beach shorts, was applying sunscreen for Xixi. Murphy had repeatedly told him to do this in order to prevent her daughter from getting tanned. Yang Yi carefully grabbed Xixi's exposed arm and applied the sunscreen evenly. Xixi couldn't wait any longer. The little girl, who was wearing a swimsuit, put on a wide-brimmed sun hat, held a small pink bucket in one hand and a small plastic spatula in the other, and ran ahead excitedly. The little girl had a pair of thin and long legs. She ran very fast, leaving a trail of light footprints on the beach in the blink of an eye. Xixi's giggles could be heard from afar. "Papa, hurry up." Yang Yi pushed up his sunglasses and followed her with a smile. Yang Yi, who was alone, might attract the attention of the opposite sex because of his height and figure. However, Yang Yi had a little girl running around happily, which greatly reduced the attention he received and reduced the risk of his identity being exposed. After a while, Yang Yi and Xixi found a place to settle down and look for shells on a beach with fewer people. "Let's do it here," Cece said eagerly to her father. "Okay." Yang Yi smiled and squatted down. He took Xixi's small spatula and removed a large piece of sand in front of him. He also picked out a few shells and showed them to Xixi. "Look, there are many shells here, but these two are not very good looking. They have chipped corners. I want to look for them too." Xixi jumped up and down on the side. She looked very cute when she was impatient. The little girl was not satisfied with looking for shells on the beach that her father had turned over. She took a small spatula and dug in the sand. Perhaps she was a little greedy, but the spatula dug very deep. The little girl held her breath and struggled to turn over the spatula of sand. The moment she turned over the sand, Xixi staggered a little. Yang Yi felt funny and reached out to pull her. However, Xixi still felt that it was very interesting. She smiled and said, "Papa, you're looking there. I'm looking here." They also had a clear division of labor and divided their respective territories. After that, Xixi squatted down on the beach. Her two white and tender little hands moved in the sand pit that she had just dug, looking for beautiful shells. After a while, Xixi's little hands were stained with sand and became dirty, but Xixi did not care. "Take your time. Don't worry, be careful not to scratch your hands," Yang Yi said worriedly. Although she did not want her father to intervene, after a while, Xixi excitedly came to find her father again. "Papa, Papa, look, I found a super big shell." Xixi happily ran to show her father her spoils of war. In fact, it could not be said to be super big, because it was just a fan-shaped shell that was twice as big as an ordinary small shell. It was very common. The outside was rough and linear, but the inside was smooth and delicate. The sand inside had been cleaned by Xixi's little hands. "Congratulations, Xixi, you have got your first spoil of war," Yang Yi said with a smile. "This is good, put it in your bucket." "Hee Papa, you should also hurry up and find it." Xixi smiled happily, turned her little head, and continued to search in her territory. Of course, Yang Yi could not just stand aside and watch. He also squatted down to help Xixi dig the shell. This 87 meters tall man was digging sand on the beach like a child, which was very funny. However, who could say anything about it when he bowed his head and played with his daughter? Xixi was digging shells on the beach today. She felt that she had entered a new world. Shells were so magical. There were so many strange shells, and none of them looked the same. In addition to fan-shaped shells, there were small, curved shells like snails, and even long, sharp, spiral shells. Of course, when it came to good-looking shells, Xixi still preferred those fan-shaped shells that were smooth on the outside and inside. Not only because they were beautiful and looked shiny, but also because they were like a layer of oil, which was very comfortable to touch. Xixi and her father worked together and dug on the beach for nearly an hour. The pink bucket was half full, and it was still heavy when she carried it. But this was the result of her own efforts. She was satisfied in her heart. She was full of vitality and carried the bucket by herself, without her father's help. Let's go. Yang Yi patted Shishi's little shoulder lovingly and said, let's wash these shells in the sand. You will find that they are more beautiful. There was a bathing area on the beach. Yang Yi took Shishi to the tap outside to wash the shells. However, the little girl played with the water more than washing the shells. She took a big shell and put it under the water. Suddenly, the water splashed around and sprinkled on her face. The little girl squinted her eyes and wrinkled her little nose to avoid the water. While giggling and having a lot of fun, Yang Yi washed the shells very carefully. In order not to bring the sand home, he washed the sand on each shell and finally put it in a plastic bag. Papa, why are there no clams in the shells here? Shishi was satisfied with playing. Then she remembered this question and asked curiously. Shishi had eaten clams before, so she felt that the shells of clams were similar to these shells. Because these shells are shells left by dead clams or other mollusks. They originally lived in the sea, but these shells were washed ashore by the sea, so you dug them out. Yang Yi explained. Shishi still had a lot of questions. She picked up a spiral shell and asked, Papa, why does this one look different from those? They are different shells. This one grows in a spiral shape. At the beginning it is just a little bit. As it grows, the shell that protects it will also grow in this direction, circle by circle. Yang Yi explained. Papa, then does this one look like a snail? Shishi finally thought of a reference. Yes, like a snail. These shells are small houses where they live and grow. But a snail grows up on land, and these shells grow up in the sea. Yang Yi explained with a smile. On the way back, Shishi asked a lot of questions. To be honest, Yang Yi didn't know much about shellfish. What little knowledge he had was almost exhausted by his daughter. Chapter 777. After digging up many shells and carefully selecting them, Shishi would definitely be able to make beautiful pen holders for the three teachers. Just as Shishi, her mother, and her father were making pen holders, on the other side of Jiangcheng, Yu Xiaowei, who was only 2 years older than Shishi, was also obediently sitting beside her mother, listening to her read a story to her. Xiaobubu once again sat on top of the tall soy sauce bottle. He was thinking proudly, haha, I was really too timid in the past. Actually, falling from such a high place isn't a big deal. There's no problem at all. On the contrary, this is quite fun. I want to try it again. Ewing looked at her manuscript and slowly read it out loud. She had already written a few chapters of the story. Previously, she was still working on it behind closed doors and didn't show it to anyone. However, after a few revisions, Ewing gradually gained some confidence in herself. She felt that it was necessary to share it with her daughter and see if she liked it. Yu Xiaowei was also one of the readers of this story. In the past, Yu Ying had also told this story to Yu Xiaowei. However, at that time, Yu Ying's train of thought was a little messy. The structure of the story was also very scattered. The level of excitement naturally couldn't be compared to the version that had been carefully planned and revised by her. As a matter of fact, at the brightly lit study table in the bedroom, Yu Ying and her daughter were sitting side by side. Yu Ying was reading according to the manuscript while Yu Xiaowei was also listening attentively. Oh no. Xiaobubu used too much force and couldn't control himself. He actually brought the soy sauce bottle down with him. Her mother's voice suddenly made Yu Xiaowei nervous. The little girl pursed her lips and stared with her eyes wide open. This time, Xiaobubu knocked into Guoguo's small bowl together with the soy sauce bottle. The small bowl was knocked out and rolled on the floor. The white rice spilled all over the floor. If Shishi was listening to the story, she would definitely grab her father's hand and ramble on. However, Yu Xiaowei didn't like to interrupt. She just listened nervously. Then Ewing talked about how Guoguo was angry at Xiaobubu for wasting food. She also talked about how every grain of food was hard work. As she read the manuscript, she didn't forget to remind her daughter of the importance of this principle. Mom works in a restaurant. Many customers don't finish their meals and leave behind a lot of leftover food. It's really wasteful. But we can't learn from them. We have to be like Guogua and understand that every grain of rice is hard work. Yu Xiaowei gently nodded. She hesitated for a moment before saying, Mother has a hard time earning money. Yu Ying was stunned. She didn't expect her daughter to be so sensible. It might be difficult for others to understand her feelings at this moment, but one had to know that it was Saturday. Yu Ying had actually worked all day, and only had a little free time at night to accompany her daughter. She even waited for her daughter to fall asleep before continuing to write. No matter how hard and tiring it was, Yu Ying had endured it all by herself all these years. She had never complained to anyone, but only she herself knew. But at this moment, when she was talking about how hard it was to farm, her daughter was more concerned about how hard it was to earn money to support the family. Yu Ying's eyes instantly turned red. No matter how strong she was, she couldn't resist the softness in her heart. Thank you, Xiaowei. Mom is very touched. No matter how hard it is, it's worth it. Yu Ying hugged Yu Xiaowei and pretended to be calm. Let's continue the story. Then, Yu Ying talked about how Xiaobubu and Guogua had a conflict. The angry Xiaobubu found a chance to escape from Guogua's pocket and began its adventure. Yu Ying's manuscript only reached the part where Xiaobubu was caught by the rats. However, when she finished reading, it was almost time for Yu Xiaowei to go to bed. Xiaowei, what do you think of Mom's story? Yu Ying sat by the bed and pulled the blanket over Yu Xiaowei's stomach. The weather was neither hot nor cold, so there was no need to turn on the fan. However, she still needed to cover her stomach with a blanket to prevent her stomach from catching a cold. Yu Xiaowei looked at her mother and blinked her eyes. She said softly, It's very good. I like it. Oh, that's good. Mom is happy that you like it. Yu Ying was really elated. Although her daughter didn't talk much, she was very smart and honest. She didn't like to lie. If she said it was good, it meant that it wouldn't be bad. However, she couldn't be too smug in front of her daughter. Yu Ying took a deep breath and pretended to be serious. Xiaowei, Mom wants to tell you something very important. That is, you can't be like Xiaobubu. You can't be so willful. Yu Xiaowei looked at her mother and listened carefully. If you have a conflict with Mom, we can slowly resolve it and communicate with each other. You definitely can't be like Xiaobubu and run away from home. As Yu Ying spoke, she was moved. She said with a nasal voice, If you suddenly disappear, Mom will be very sad. Yu Xiaowei, who was lying on the bed, had already turned her body. She nodded lightly and hesitated for a moment. She even reached out a small hand from under the blanket and gently grabbed her mother's hand. At Yang Yi's house, while Yu Ying was reading her script with her daughter, the Yang's handicraft factory announced the end of the day's work. In fact, the production of the pen holder was only at the beginning. However, it was almost time for Shishi to take a bath and go to bed, so it was fine to leave the rest to tomorrow. After taking a bath, Shishi climbed into bed as usual and waited to read with her father before going to bed. However, Yang Yi had other plans today. Shishi, look, what gift did Dad bring you? Yang Yi smiled and shook a small box to show it to Shishi. Wow, there's a gift. Shishi happily turned over in bed and stood up on the small blanket. Yang Yi handed the small box to Shishi. Shishi sat down with it in her arms and placed it on her lap. As she opened it, she asked curiously, Dad, why do I have a gift? Is this my birthday gift? No, your birthday is 1 month away. We'll go to Grandpa's house to celebrate your birthday. Yang Yi smiled and said, Dad suddenly wanted to give you a gift, so there is a gift. In fact, Yang Yi just adjusted the electronic components in the Buddha statue and tested it for a few days. After it was done, he wanted to put it on Shishi. However, as for why he wanted to give Shishi a gift at this time, Yang Yi really didn't have a good reason. In fact, Shishi didn't care. She grabbed the red string and took out the small Buddha statue. She cried in surprise, Wow! Dad, what is this? It's so beautiful. In fact, when Yang Yi took her to the cold mountain temple last time, Shishi had seen the Buddha statue, but Shishi didn't recognize it now because it was too small. She liked this Buddha statue. On the one hand, it was because Yang Yi's carving was exquisite. On the other hand, it was because the reddish-brown color and natural texture of this wooden lump were really beautiful. Yang Yi spent some time explaining the function of this Buddha statue pendant to Shishi. For example, Yang Yi showed Shishi the function of this Buddha pendant. The little girl had a lot of fun. In the end, Yang Yi persuaded Shishi for a long time to understand that this function could only be used when she encountered the situation that Teacher Kai had mentioned in Huijia Primary School, or when she was in danger. Only then did Shishi reluctantly put it down. If you want to call Dad, you can just use your mobile phone. Yang Yi smiled and said. But I think this is more fun. Shishi pouted her small mouth. She didn't realize that her father was worried about some potential dangers. We'll wear this when we get up tomorrow. Now Dad will tell you a story, and then go to bed early, okay? Yang Yi said softly. This situation was also what Yang Yi had expected. Shishi didn't have much sense of crisis. Therefore, he wanted to tell Shishi a very famous magic story from his previous life. From the story, he wanted to tell Shishi that there were still many unknown dangers in this world. Some strangers might have evil intentions, so she needed to be vigilant at all times. Of course, the most important thing was to ask Dad for help. Okay. I like listening to Dad's stories the most. Shishi, who was looking at the Buddha statue a moment ago, was now full of joy and lying back in bed, looking at her father expectantly. Chapter 778. Similar to Yu Ying, Yang Yi also wanted to inspire Shishi's sense of self-protection by telling her stories. However, unlike Yu Ying, who created an orthodox fairy tale that was close to life, the story Yang Yi wanted to tell Shishi came from a classic fantasy novel in his previous life. Of course, it was also a children's book. Shishi certainly wanted to hear her father tell her new stories, because Yang Yi had reduced the frequency of telling her new stories after she started reading before bed. Although it was interesting to read picture books with colorful pictures with her father, Cece liked her father's stories even more. This story happened in the distant England. Shishi, do you know where England is? Yang Yi took the small globe that he had bought for Shishi and pointed to the long and narrow island for Shishi to see. It's here. Shishi curiously leaned into her father's arms and looked at it. Hey Papa, it's very close to Lu Weisha's house. Shishi's eyes glanced at the place where the globe had drawn a circle, and said with some surprise. Yes, it's very close to Lu Weisha's house. Yang Yi said with a smile. Back to the story that Shishi was looking forward to hearing. Yang Yi described the 4 children, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. They were sent to the home of an old professor in the countryside to escape the war. That was a story from a long time ago, not long after your grandfather was born. At that time, the capital of England was often bombed by planes. The planes with big bombs would blow up a whole house when they flew over. Yang Yi spread out his fingers and exaggerated the appearance of the explosion. Boom. It's all gone. Many people would be killed at that time. Shishi's small mouth opened in surprise, but her surprise and fear did not suppress her desire to speak. Papa, what about Grandpa? Why did you blow up the house? The little girl hugged her father's arm and asked worriedly. At that time, our country was also at war. Some bad guys wanted to rob our homeland, so they sent bombing planes over. Fortunately, the army defeated them, so we can live in peace now. Yang Yi comforted Shishi with a smile. Grandpa is also fine. Isn't he fine now? Shishi heaved a sigh of relief. The kind-hearted little girl muttered, We can't fight. Fighting is not a good thing. Well, she mistook war as a fight. Yang Yi continued to tell the story. After a while, Yang Yi told the story of Lucy playing hide-and-seek with her brothers and sisters in the professor's big house. The original novel was not about hide-and-seek. The plot of the movie was hide-and-seek. Yang Yi felt that it would be easier for Cece to understand the plot of the movie, because she had just played hide-and-seek with her friends on the 1st of June. In Yang Yi's rhythmic description, Lucy got into the big wardrobe. What she didn't expect was that she actually went through it, and suddenly appeared in a snowy forest. The trees were very tall, and the leaves were as thin as grass. They were covered with fine ice. Snowflakes were floating in the sky. They were like fairies swaying and sprinkling on Lucy's hair. Yang Yi gently touched Shishi's hair and described with words. It seemed that the whole world was covered with a very clean white. Only not far away, There was a lamppost that was on, emitting a dim yellow light. Yang Yi's description gradually formed a clear picture in Xishi's mind. Xishi felt that it was very magical. Her big eyes were shining, and she couldn't help but let out a soft wow. Was there such a magical world behind the wardrobe? Papa, is this where Sister Elsa lives? Xishi asked naively. No, this is another magical world. Listen to Papa. Yang Yi smiled and told Xishi the next story. Lucy met a strange shepherd, Mr. Tunas, whose upper body was a human and lower body was a lamb leg. Later, under the warm invitation of this shy Mr. Tunas, Lucy, who originally wanted to go home, decided to follow Mr. Tunas and visit his home. Half human and half lamb. This is very magical. However, what appeared in Xishi's mind was the cute little face of a lamb, not the appearance of a shepherd. Xishi, if you were Lucy, would you go to his home with Mr. Tunas? Yang Yi stopped and asked. Xishi blinked her eyes, hesitated for a moment, and shook her head. Yang Yi was very pleased and asked, why not? Xishi looked at Papa and said, because I don't know him, and then I didn't tell Papa that I can only go to other people's home with Papa's consent. Yang Yi touched Xishi's little head with gratification, but he didn't rush to preach, and continued to tell the story. At Mr. Tuna's house, the shy but enthusiastic shepherd invited Lucy to tea and snacks, and even played a song from his hometown for her, which was actually a lullaby. As the story became more and more intense, Mr. Tunas finally became ruthless. He told the sleepy Lucy that he was going to report Lucy's news to the White Witch, because the bad person who turned the beautiful land of Narnia into a world of ice and snow wanted to catch every human child who appeared. Mr. Tunas is a bad guy? Xishi, who was a little sleepy from listening to the story, heard this twist and her big eyes widened in disbelief. Mr. Tunas, who Yang Yi had just described, was actually a very good shepherd. Although he looked strange, he was actually very timid and very kind. Xishi felt that it was not a bad choice for Lucy to go to drink tea. Let's not care whether Mr. Tunas is a bad guy, or just a good person who wants to do bad things under the coercion of the White Witch. Yang Yi turned around, looked into Cece's eyes, and began to talk about his real purpose tonight. In fact, it's not that simple. In fact, there are many, many bad people in this world that you can't see. Cece was so engrossed in listening that she even forgot to interrupt. Bad people will not label themselves as bad people. You may know a person for a long time, but you may not know his true nature. It is possible that a person who looks very good can actually be a bad guy. Yang Yi said, only mom and dad are definitely good people who will never harm you. You can't judge other people based on your intuition, understand? Then what should I do? Xishi pursed her lips and asked fearfully. Don't worry, you still need dad to help you judge. When you grow up and have your own judgment, you will be able to judge whether he is a good person or a bad person. Yang Yi said gently, this is also why dad told you that no matter where you go now, you have to tell dad first and ask for dad's permission. Xishi nodded obediently. Dad, now give me another example. Yang Yi smiled and said, it's similar to the question teacher Kai asked. What if you and dad are traveling outside, but you accidentally get separated from dad? Find the security uncle and ask them to call dad. Xishi answered very smoothly. Dad's phone number is 13x times x times x. This method works, but sometimes, you may not be able to find the security uncle or the police uncle, and the person you ask for help may be a bad person. Yang Yi said. Chapter 779. I already said that I should look for the police uncle if I have any difficulties. Now my father said that the police uncle might also be a bad person. This is making things difficult for me, Yang Xiaoxi. I don't know. Xishi pouted and said. She was now immersed in the scene set by her father, but she had forgotten what her father had given her in the beginning. It didn't matter. Yang Yi took the Buddha pendant and shook it gently in front of Xishi. He smiled and said, you can use this. Press it once to call your father. Press it twice and you'll hang up the phone. Cece remembered this. She yawned and said, yes. In this way, you can talk to your father and tell him where you are. He will come to find you immediately. Yang Yi smiled and said, Also, if you are really in danger and you shouldn't make any sound, you only need to press this thing twice. You don't need to talk on the phone, and your father can quickly appear by your side. She nodded obediently. She rubbed her eyes. She was very tired mentally and physically, but the little girl still listened very carefully. So you must remember, if you encounter any problems, you can use this thing to summon your father to your side. Your father will definitely protect you. Yang Yi gently put the Buddha pendant in Shishi's hand and let her hold it. This way, the memory would be deeper. Shishi should have remembered it. Yang Yi put away the Buddha pendant, tucked her in and said softly, "Well, go to sleep. Look at how sleepy you are." "Papa, you haven't finished the story yet," Shishi said reluctantly. "It's okay to listen to it tomorrow," Yang Yi said with a smile. Sleepiness came like waves, one after another. Shishi couldn't help but close her eyes. Her delicate little nose breathed gently, as if she had begun to fall asleep. Yang Yi still had to accompany Shishi for a while. He didn't leave until Shishi was completely asleep. Unexpectedly, after a while, Shishi opened her confused eyes again and whispered, "Papa, is Mr. Tunas a bad guy?" She was still brooding over this issue. Why was Mr. Tunas the shepherd, who sounded so nice, a bad egg? He's not a bad guy. He still has some conscience. You'll know tomorrow, Yang Yi said. Dad can tell you secretly. Lucy will be fine. Hearing this answer, Cece's tense heartstrings finally relaxed. Only then did the sleepy little girl fall asleep peacefully. In the United States, in an ordinary apartment in Queens, New York, Wilson, who was carrying a briefcase and wearing a suit, was returning from outside. When he took out his key to open the door of the suite opposite his opened, and a young man's head poked out. "Hey, Wilson, I remember you're a music agent, right?" The young man had earrings hanging from his ears and a tattoo on his arm that was holding onto the door frame. Of course, it wasn't the kind of tattoo that belonged to a notorious gang. It was just a reflection of the young man's personality. Miller. "Yes, brother. What's the matter?" Wilson said with a smile. Obviously, they were very familiar with each other. Although they were not as familiar with each other as they were in Friends or The Big Bang Theory, they were still neighbors. Wilson was more than 10 years older than Miller. Miller had just graduated from college, while Wilson had been an agent for more than 10 years. However, both of them liked basketball, so they often watched games together. "Then you must know music very well." "Well, I'm going to confess to a girl tonight, so I learned a song online. Can you help me see how I sing it? Or help me guide me?" Miller raised the guitar in his hand. "Oh, why are you so serious?" "Miller, I guess it must be a very beautiful girl." Wilson teased. "She is very beautiful and has a hot body. Also, she is very shy." Miller smiled. "Brother, do you agree?" "Why not? I'm happy to help you." Wilson didn't even go back to his place. He went straight to Miller's house to listen to him sing. "I learned this song from a singer online. He's Chinese. D*M in it. It's very troublesome to buy songs from Chinese websites." Miller explained to Wilson. "You want to sing a Chinese song? Or is your girl Chinese?" I have to say, I'm shocked," Wilson said in surprise. No. She's not Chinese. Also, I'm going to sing an English song. It's a very good English song. It was very popular on the website for a while. I'll sing it for you. You can give me some suggestions later," Miller quickly explained. Dang, dang, dang. Miller played the guitar. The accompaniment was a little rusty. The score was also found by someone else, so he didn't know if it was right. Not a bad prelude. Wilson nodded slightly and thought to himself. Will you? That's right. Miller sang Yang Yi's I'm Yours. He probably didn't learn it for long. Although he was a little rusty, he still managed to sing the basic tune. After Miller finished singing, Wilson asked Miller to play the song on the computer. Once the original song was played, the difference was immediately obvious. It's very good. As Wilson listened, he sighed to himself. How can a Chinese sing an English song so well? Wilson still guided Miller enthusiastically. Although he wasn't considered a music expert, he was still in the industry. In the past, he wanted to be a singer. However, the difference in ability was too great, So he chose to be a manager. With his level, he could still give some guidance to a rookie like Miller. What's with this song of yours? I don't think I've heard of it before. Where did you get it? Wilson asked casually as he chatted with Miller over a beer during a break in the guidance. A Chinese singer sang it. Around April, someone took a video of him and uploaded it to the internet. Then it suddenly became a hit. My friend showed me this video. Wait, I'll show it to you. Miller excitedly opened the video's webpage in his favorites folder. Wilson saw the video of Yang Yi singing for Murphy. However, compared to the specially recorded music, the sound quality of the video was much worse. Wilson only paid more attention to Yang Yi's appearance. It really was a Chinese. His singing voice didn't sound like a Chinese at all. Look here. There's a comment by Bruno Levin at the bottom of the video. Bruno Levin guessed correctly. This man is indeed a professional singer. Previously, many people didn't believe that this song was written by this Chinese. Miller said, "Wait, you're saying that this song was written by him?" Wilson asked in surprise. "You didn't believe it either, right?" Miller chuckled and said, "But later on, it was confirmed that it was written by him. Moreover, this guy is really good. He's a very good singer in China. He has written many songs and is also a writer. At the beginning of the year, I recommended Prison Break to you. Do you still remember?" "Yes, Prison Break is my favorite TV series," Wilson said regretfully. "Unfortunately, the next season will have to wait until next year." "Wait, you mentioned Prison Break. What does it have to do with this person?" "Prison Break was written by him. Wolf TV bought the rights from him. I heard that Global Pictures wanted it, but they couldn't compete with Wolf," Miller said emotionally. "Sai, the more you talk about it, the more I like this guy. That's impossible. With so many achievements, he shouldn't be unknown. I've never heard of him," Wilson said with a frown. Miller shrugged and smiled. "Maybe it's because he didn't come to America to develop his career? When I went to the Chinese website to buy and download this song, my friend who taught me said that there might not be any management company in America that signed him. That's why I had to put in a lot of effort." "Miller, what did you say his name was?" Wilson's eyes flashed, but he still had a question that he wasn't sure of. "His name is Yang." Chapter 780. Wilson was considered an experienced music agent in the industry. Although he was capable and experienced, his vision and luck were average. None of the singers he signed with were able to make a name for themselves in the American music industry. The only one who was more capable and had some achievements was a cowboy singer from his hometown, Texas. He was discovered by Wilson during a country music competition. His singing skills were unquestionable, but the cowboy was a little addicted to alcohol and had a bad temper. Once, Wilson arranged for him to appear on a TV show. However, the guy casually said something that exposed his racist tendencies. He was strongly boycotted, and naturally his future was ruined. Therefore, Wilson could only say that he had been doing well all these years. In comparison, a female agent who joined the company in the same year as him had been promoted to a gold medal manager after making a singer popular. Why would she need to live in a commoner's apartment like him? Wilson was eager to discover a newcomer with potential and turn him into a superstar in the music industry. He wanted to prove that he was not an unlucky music agent. "This is the person I want." Wilson looked at Yang Yi on the computer screen and felt a surge of impulse. After bidding farewell to Miller, Wilson returned to his apartment. He did not even bother to take off his clothes. He pulled on his tie and turned on his computer excitedly and nervously. Through some of his agent resources, he looked up Yang Yi's name. No. He's not even registered with the American Singers Guild. This guy is really a complete newcomer. Wilson looked at the results of his investigation excitedly. Yang Yi had not signed with any music or management company in the United States. Wilson felt that he had a chance. He was an Asian singer who could compose beautiful English songs. The cumulative views of his singing videos had already exceeded 100 million views. Furthermore, this person had a certain degree of popularity among the Chinese community. He had also written a wonderful script like Prison Break. With all these factors combined, if he still did not become popular, Wilson felt that he would no longer be able to survive in this industry. However, there was a problem. How could Wilson find this singer? I have to go to China and find Yang before the other agents find him. But China is so big. Where can I find him? Wilson pondered. By the way, I think Leo's ex-girlfriend is an international student from China. Maybe she can help. Wilson thought of one of his cousins. Wilson did not know that after Yang Yi became famous, many record companies in the US approached him. There were even some international tycoons who wanted to sign him to develop in the US. But the result was obvious. Yang Yi rejected all of them. However, Wilson didn't have time to think too much about it. Regardless of whether others were rejected or not, he had to give it a try no matter what. He had to seize this precious opportunity. 4 days later, at Shanghai Hongqiao International Airport, Wilson, who had flown halfway around the world, arrived in China. His cousin's ex-girlfriend generously helped him. Not only did she help him find the contact address of Yang Yi's studio, but she also helped him describe his route plan after arriving in Shanghai in both English and Chinese. Therefore, although it was difficult for Wilson, he still showed up at the entrance of Phoebe's studio a day later. After a long explanation with the receptionist, Mo Shaowan received him. Mo Shaowan had also lived in the US for a period of time. Her spoken English made Wilson feel close to her. He told Mo Shaowan his intention. I rushed over from the US because I want to talk to Yang face to face. If he goes to the US to develop his career, he will definitely become a very popular star. Wilson even handed Mo Shaowan his business card. The name of the management company listed on it was very famous. However, what disappointed him was that Mo Shaowan wasn't very surprised. Maybe they still don't know the strength of Treasure Management Company. Wilson thought to himself. He tried his best to describe the top 10 management companies in the US to Mo Shaowan. At the same time, he also bragged about his own abilities and achievements. There were indeed a lot of exaggerations. Even so, Mo Shaowan was still unmoved. She had even received people who were bigger than Wilson on behalf of Yang Yi. Although it was not necessarily about music, people from Wolf TV station, the great director Wu Yan, and others were more important than Wilson. If you want to meet Yang Yi, I'm sorry to disappoint you. He is not in Jiangqing now. He went to Shanghai early this morning to record a program, Mo Shaowan said to Wilson. Mo Shaowan was not lying to Wilson. Yang Yi had indeed gone to Shanghai to record a program. The special program of the Extreme Challenge, the charity concert, would officially start tomorrow night. Yang Yi, as Dan Hongkuei's guest composer and actor, would also be performing on stage. Moreover, according to the arrangement, he would have a solo song. However, to Wilson, this was a piece of news that made him feel helpless and disappointed. It was not easy for him to find his way to Jiangqing from Shanghai. In the end, Yang Yi had gone to Shanghai. This was simply fate making a fool out of him. How about this? It was not easy for you to come all the way here from the US. If you are willing, I can bring you to Shanghai to watch Yang Yi's performance. After that, I will arrange a meeting for both of you, okay? Mo Shaowan said. All right. Thank you very much. Wilson felt as if he had been saved from a hopeless situation. He grabbed this opportunity excitedly. When Wilson arrived in Shanghai, he could not meet Yang Yi as Yang Yi was still rehearsing. However, Yang Yi knew about Wilson's situation. Mo Shaowan was also contacting some acquaintances in the US to help investigate Wilson's background. Wilson, who was kept in the dark, waited until the concert started. He then watched the show with great interest. Although he could not understand the Chinese songs on the stage and the host's Chinese dialogue at all, Wilson still found it interesting. This concert was not serious singing, and there were all kinds of pranks on the singers in between. Finally, it was Yang Yi's turn. Wilson recognized the man on the stage that he had been thinking about day and night. Yang Yi's appearance was extraordinary. The audience below the stage gave him a round of applause and cheers. However, Wilson preferred Yang Yi's calm attitude. Yang Yi was not as passionate as other singer-songwriters. Even when he was dancing with Dan Hongkuei and the choreographers, his aura did not fluctuate at all. Of course, Wilson still could not understand the song that Yang Yi was singing. Of course, Wilson did not know that there were not many people who could understand the lyrics of the song that he and Dan Hongkue were singing. Wilson could only admire Yang Yi's stage performance and his singing skills that could be appreciated under any lyrics. He sang very well. Wilson exclaimed in his heart. This temperament is simply the seed of a superstar. After a series of pranks on Dan Hongkue, Yang Yi began his performance. Under Wilson's surprised gaze, Yang Yi played the violin. The gentle melody began to flow in the hearts of the audience like a trickle. It was a Chinese song. However, this time, Wilson could not help but ask Mo Shaowan, who was next to him, "What song is this?" "When You're Old." Mo Shaowan translated the song title in English and told Wilson, "It's also a song that Yang Yi composed." A good song was to be listened to, and Wilson did not want to interrupt others' enjoyment of the song again. However, Wilson had a lot of thoughts in his mind. He should sing an English song. "I'm Yours" is very good. He actually knows how to play the violin, and he plays it very well. Wilson did not know how to play the violin, but he knew how to appreciate it. Yang Yi can definitely become a superstar that will make people crazy. I can already imagine him performing at the New Year's Eve concert in the Metropolis Times Square. It will definitely be spectacular. Wilson looked at Yang Yi and fantasized in his heart. However, he did not know that Yang Yi was not an ordinary singer. He was the toughest bone in the world. Chapter 781. Yang Yi's performance was, of course, the finale. After he finished singing, the Extreme Challenge charity concert also came to an end. Under Wilson's expectant gaze, Mo Shaowan glanced at her phone and nodded. "Let's go. Mr. Yang is waiting for you backstage. Here's my chance." Wilson quickly got up, tidied up his suit, and followed Mo Shaowan backstage in high spirits. Not long after, he saw Yang Yi, who had just changed his clothes, walk in. So tall. Only when he got closer did Wilson have a real understanding of Yang Yi's figure. He was considered to be relatively tall, about 1.8 meters tall, but Yang Yi was even taller than him, which was different from his impression of Chinese people. Of course, Wilson was a professional agent. He wouldn't be distracted easily. He took the initiative to greet Yang Yi and introduced himself. "Hello, Mr. Wilson." Yang Yi shook Wilson's hand and smiled calmly. His reaction wasn't very enthusiastic. The situation that Wilson was worried about appeared. In fact, when he first communicated with Mo Shaowan and saw Yang Yi's extraordinary temperament, Wilson had a faint premonition. After all, Wilson was also in the upper-class circle of the metropolis. He had seen people with the same temperament as Yang Yi. They were basically rich and respectable. Would a rich and respectable person be willing to lower his status and join a management company? Of course. Wilson subconsciously concealed this judgment from himself. He hoped that Yang Yi was an ordinary singer, hoping to enter a stage that seemed more advanced than him. But now, it seemed that his initial judgment was right. Wilson still enthusiastically introduced himself and his company's strength in the American music industry to Yang Yi. "If you're willing to join our company and sign a music management contract with our treasure management company, we'll do our best to provide you with the best services, such as image packaging, program promotion, record recording, etc." However, Yang Yi only listened to him politely. If it had been any other situation, Yang Yi would not have agreed to meet Wilson. He had a lot of things to deal with, so the contact from these agencies was basically handled by Mo Shaowan. However, Wilson was the only music manager in America who did not contact Yang Yi or his company through phone calls. He was the only one who chose to travel all the way to China, and even found the address of his company in Jiangcheng. "Based on your sincerity, I can't possibly let you come all the way here only to be rejected. That's why I asked my agent to bring you to Shanghai to listen to your intentions," Yang Yi said to Wilson with a smile. "But my friend, I'm sorry. My answer is still no. I will not join any management company in the US. Not only Treasure Management Company, but I will also join all management companies and record companies." Yang Yi made his intentions clear. Wilson was very disappointed. He tried to ask Yang Yi, "May I know why?" It's because your music is really good, but it's not very popular in the US. It's a pity. I can help you arrange a TV show in the US like Prada Talk Show. It's the most influential talk show in the US. Prada Talk Show? Yang Yi's expression was a little strange. I remember that one of your contracted singers suffered a huge blow on this show. Mo Shawan was very fast. In just one night, she got someone to find Wilson's file in the US. Of course, these were all public and there was no special confidentiality. Therefore, Yang Yi knew Wilson very well, much better than he knew himself. You know about Boone? Wilson looked at Yang Yi in surprise. Sorry, I have to confirm the authenticity of your identity, Yang Yi said with a smile. Sigh, it's okay. Actually, it's not a secret. It's just that when I signed the contract with Boone, I didn't know that he was a racist. After all, he and I are both white. Wilson said helplessly. After the incident, the company terminated the contract with Boone, and I was punished. Yang Yi knew about all these. He also knew that Wilson's luck was really bad. The artists he had worked with did not bring him any good results. However, Wilson's character was not bad. Yang Yi saw from the information that although his artists were hopeless, Wilson still tried his best to help them fight for all kinds of opportunities until the contract ended. Even so, Yang Yi still rejected Wilson. Sorry, I'm not that interested in the US music industry. Moreover, even if I want to develop in the US, I will choose to open my own company. I'm not an ordinary singer. I believe you already know this. After sending off the disappointed Wilson, Yang Yi went to the lounge next door and saw Murphy, Shishi, and Tong Tong. Papa, you sing so well. Cece, who had been watching the show with her mother in the audience, was still very excited at this moment. She waved her little paw and expressed her praise to her father. Is it just that I sing well? Am I not handsome when I play the violin? Yang Yi teased Shishi and laughed. It's also super handsome. But Papa, I don't understand the song that you and Uncle Dan sang. Shishi handed her little hand to Tong Tong, who was leaning over and stretching out his hand. Then she turned her little head and said to her father, Mom said that it's the language of Mom's hometown. Yes, it's Hokkien. If you want to learn, either of us can teach you. Yang Yi said with a smile. I want to learn. I want to learn. Shishi said happily as she jumped around. Learn from your father. He's very patient. Murphy said with a smile. Your mother still has to take care of your brother. Yang Yi touched Shishi's little head and changed the topic. Shishi, did you and your mother donate the books that we brought today? This charity gala didn't sell tickets or collect donations. It only collected books from fans to donate to children in poor areas. Everyone had to bring at least 6 books. Yang Yi certainly couldn't let Shishi miss out on such a meaningful event. He had already prepared the donated books for Shishi. I donated them. Mom asked my aunt to take me there. There were so many books and the table was so big and so long. Shishi described the scene to her father excitedly. That's very good. You know, by donating these books, many brothers and sisters who can't afford to buy books will be able to read them. Yang Yi said gently to Shishi, You're helping them. On the way back to the hotel, Murphy learned that Yang Yi had rejected Wilson. She curiously picked up Wilson's information and read it. After flipping through 2 pages, she saw a familiar word. Wilson is from Texas. Murphy turned to Yang Yi and said, Yang Yi's father-in-law's farm was also in Texas. Yes, but he works in New York. He works in a New York agency, Yang Yi said. Murphy wasn't very interested. She took the opportunity to talk to Yang Yi about going home during the summer vacation. When are we going to go to my father's place? My mother urged me the last time she called. When Shishi graduates from kindergarten, we'll go there. We'll stay with our father for another summer vacation, about 2 months. It's a long time. Don't worry, Yang Yi said with a smile. It's not me who's anxious. It's my parents who are anxious. They haven't held Tong Tong before, Murphy said with some emotion. Soon, in less than 2 weeks. Yang Yi put his arm around Murphy's shoulder and comforted her. Okay. Murphy nodded gently. The car quieted down. After all, it was very late. Shishi was so sleepy that she dozed off next to her father after her excitement. Yang Yi, on the other hand, pondered. That's right. We have to stay in America for 2 months. That's a long time. What can we do in such a long time? At that moment, Wilson's words from before echoed in Yang Yi's ears. Why don't we leave a deep impression on the foreigners in America? Chapter 782. Wilson quietly boarded the plane back to America. However, even though he was 10,000 meters above the ground, he did not feel depressed or disappointed at all. His furrowed brows and pursed lips were merely a manifestation of his uncertain mood. After Yang Yi had rejected him the day before, Wilson thought that he had no chance. However, just as Wilson was about to leave, Yang Yi came looking for him again. After all, the hotel room was arranged by Mo Shaowan. Of course, Yang Yi did not go back on his word. He looked for Wilson because he wanted to poach Wilson from Zhenbao Entertainment. He wanted to sign a contract with someone else, but in the end he was poached by someone else? One could imagine how dumbfounded Wilson's expression was at that time. Of course, Yang Yi was not just saying that casually. He wanted to open a small entertainment company in America. He needed an experienced and capable agent like Wilson to help him and Murphy with their work and itinerary in America. Wilson was not the only one. Yang Yi would also send people to America to poach a few more agents. They were involved in music, movies, and TV dramas. They would form a huge and comprehensive team of agents to serve him and Murphy. Wilson was only the first agent that Yang Yi invited. This idea is crazy. Wilson still felt that it was unbelievable. However, Wilson could see the meaning behind Yang Yi's actions. I'm rich. He had money and talent. Wilson's rationality made him cautious. However, in his heart he could not deny that he was tempted. After working in Zhenbao Entertainment for more than 10 years, Wilson also longed for a chance to succeed. He hoped to get a better salary instead of continuing to be an ordinary agent. Otherwise, he would not have flown to China to look for Yang Yi. This could be an opportunity. However, he had not made up his mind yet, because he did not know Yang Yi well enough. Yes, after meeting Yang Yi, Wilson realized that the information he knew from some reports was too little. Wilson wasn't sure if Yang Yi was as strong as he claimed. Based on the information we have, he should be able to earn a lot of money from prison break, but he should have other sources of income as well. Wilson couldn't sleep at all on the plane. His mind was very active. Right, there's also this. Wilson took out a small memory card that Yang Yi had given him when he said goodbye. Here are all the English songs I've written. Some were sung by me, some by my wife. Some have already been released, and some have only been registered for copyright. Listen to them, and maybe you'll make the right decision. That was what Yang Yi had said at the time. Wilson could hear a strong sense of confidence in his tone. Wilson put on his headphones and plugged them into his portable music player, something similar to an iPod in this world. The music list displayed on the screen included many new songs, including birthday songs and Golden Groove Cups. After looking at it for a while, Wilson thought to himself, let's listen to this. The title of this song was very unique. Wilson didn't know why, but he felt that it suited his current mood. Moreover, the singer of this song was Yang Yi's wife, who was said to be from the same hometown as him. In June, the recording of the first season of The Limit Challenge came to an end. However, the recording of Yang Yi's other show, China's Voice, had just begun. A certain hotel in Rivertown's Binhai district was crowded. Many young people were dressed to the nines, holding registration forms in their hands, pretending to be calm as they stood in the long queue. This was the registration and preliminary audition venue for China's Voice, Jiangnan Station. Perhaps it was because of Yang Yi's influence in Rivertown that the number of people who signed up for this station on the first day was very high. So many people? How many people would have to be screened out? In the queue, two guys carrying guitars stood side by side, whispering. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were also participating in the audition. It was worth mentioning that although Yang Yi had brought out China's Voice in advance for these two fellows, he had not told anyone about this other than Murphy. The program crew, Yang Yi, and the rest did not know that Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were his friends. Yang Yi did not give them any special privileges either, only suggesting that they sign up for the show. It's just the preliminary audition. Have some confidence in yourselves, Lu Xiaoshu said with a smile as he patted Miao Chuan's shoulder. Fortunately, the submission of the registration forms was fast. Soon, it was Lu Xiaoshu and the rest's turn. Line up properly, don't cut the queue. One by one. A staff member looked at Lu Xiaoshu and the rest and misunderstood. I'm sorry, we're in a group. We're called Thousand Miles Chuanshu. Lu Xiaoshu pointed at himself and Miao Chuan, who nodded quickly. Group? Isn't this a competition for individual singers? The staff member turned to look at his two colleagues who were in charge of registering and organizing the registration forms and asked in confusion. Yes, it's all for one person, he received a reply. Lu Xiaoshu was a little flustered as he said, No, I saw that in your registration requirements there's a group. Yang Yi did not know if China's Voice in his previous life included groups. Anyway, when Yang Yi explained to the planners, he had included groups. At this moment, there was a commotion. A middle-aged man, surrounded by a few people, walked over calmly. What's the situation here? Director Hong. Several staff members were taken aback. They were both surprised and apprehensive as they reported. Hong Yuman, the veteran music variety show director of Xiangnan TV station, was now the chief director of the production team of China's Voice. In the past 6 months, the production team of China Star Productions had expanded rapidly. Not only had they recruited a large number of cameramen, stage managers, and other frontline staff, they had also hired some experienced directors and producers with high salaries. Hong Yuman had been poached by Yin Yangfeng from his rival Xiangnan TV station. Although he had not been at China Star Productions for long, Hong Yuman quickly adjusted his state of mind and led the team to start producing the show. Of course, he did not have to do it himself, but Hong Yuman still decided to work hard. He tried his best to patrol every station for a day, urging everyone to be alert and find problems early and solve them as soon as possible. Today, Hong Yuman was patrolling River City. He did not expect to encounter such a problem as soon as he arrived. There's no problem with groups, it's written in the rules. Hong Yuman glanced at Lu Xiaoshu and the rest but did not mind. He waved his hand and said, Move quickly and review the information as soon as possible. Don't let the people behind you wait too long. With that, Hong Yuman turned and left. As he walked, he patted the shoulder of the person in charge of the station and said with a smile, The first day's workload is heavier. Ask the hotel to provide good coffee and tea for our people. This is a logistical problem. Understood, Director Hong. Also, I'll ask them to read the rules a few more times. There can't be a situation where the contestants know the rules better than us again. The person in charge said smartly. Hong Yuman only nodded. Back at Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan's side, they finally handed in the registration form without any mishap and went to their team's waiting room as instructed. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.